Chapter 377. A dazzling brilliance came head-on, and the boundless energy tide was like a vast ocean, rushing towards Huey with great pressure. Don't touch it. An unprecedented aura of death shrouded her body, and Huey G's eyes were filled with determination. She made a prompt decision, and her weak little hand tore the void in front of her. Ka ka ka. The seemingly weak little hand was extremely terrifying. A crack appeared in the space in front of her, and Huey G stepped into it without hesitation. On the other hand, Dustless also had a shocking change at this moment. His eyes were faintly dotted with some golden light spots, and it was dazzling. His indifferent temperament added some dominance for no reason. A sense of dominance over all living things arose spontaneously. Boom, boom, boom. The golden energy tide was like an ancient lament, and the entire sky was wailing, faintly begging for mercy, emitting waves of mournful cries. Looking up, the void was strangely boiling, and the flowing air was emitting hot waves. It was obvious that it was evaporated by this strange golden power. This is one of my abilities. Both eyes looked at the void in front of him. Where Dustless's gaze was focused, the void distorted and rippled. Huey G's peerless figure stood out. Different from before, the indifferent Huey G's expression finally relaxed, and there was a hint of embarrassment and discomfort. Treacherous sinner, you deserve to die. Huey G's face was pale, and her eyes were filled with anger that could burn all living things. Her murderous intent was awe-inspiring, and because of her excessive anger, her graceful body was trembling slightly. Following Dustless's gaze, Huey G was in an extremely embarrassing state. There were obvious burn marks on her body, and on the right side of her chest, one could clearly see the white jade-like skin. Further down, it was a place that was not suitable for children. Her white skin was tinged with red, and it was faintly discernible, causing one's imagination to run wild. It was no wonder that Huey G was so angry. The high and mighty goddess of Mao was forced in such an embarrassing state by Dustless. How could she not be angry? I am the flash person who ate the flash fruit, and my physique has also inherited everything of light. Dustless's dry and cracked lips opened slightly. He did not care whether Huey G understood or not. He said to himself, "The ability I used before was the usual move of the glistening fruit." Dustless's indifferent eyes fell on Huey's body. His voice was as light as autumn water, revealing a state of being aloof from worldly affairs. Like I said before, you just need to stand there quietly and let me put the collar on you. But you swore at me and even raised your sword at me. You only have yourself to blame. The mystery of light is something that even a god cannot understand. After speaking, Dustless stood with his hands behind his back. The corner of his mouth curled up into a light smile. He was fearless, shameless boasting. Huey G's pretty face changed drastically. Her eyes scanned her body without leaving a trace, and her face flashed with shame and anger. She waved her hand, and the brand new divine robe condensed again. The exposed parts were also covered. Whoosh! She lifted her hand gently, and chakra erupted. There was no fancy move, just a casual wave of chakra, and a strong wave of air suddenly appeared in the void. There was no need for fancy moves. It was direct and concise. Huey G was like this. Looking into the distance, the blade storm was formed in an instant. The scale was huge, comparable to a small black hole in the universe. It directly swallowed and distorted the sky. The small black hole in the center was enough to swallow the world. The ninjutsu in the world is derived from you, but so what? The physical attacks in the world are ineffective against me. Feeling the endless gravitational force in the vortex, Dustless looked relaxed and calm. His messy black hair danced, and his clothes were blown up by the wind, but he was surprisingly calm. Now I will let you see the true ability of light. It is the ability to surpass the normal state of the devil fruit. It is the foundation of the original move, the awakening state of glinting fruit. The strange smile on the corner of his mouth disappeared in an instant. Dustless's whole body was covered with golden chakra. The evil wave suddenly descended, and the giant samurai stood between heaven and earth. This time, Kinsusinu was different from any previous time. Because the Uchiha family is a cursed family, abandoned by the heavens. Only by falling will they gain great strength. Therefore, the ninjutsu used has an evil aura. Kinsusinu was even more so. It was as ferocious as a ghost, and the evil aura was more intense. However, this time, Kinsusinu displayed by Dustless was different from before. The evil aura disappeared, and the exaggerated height of nearly 200 meters was very peaceful. The feeling it gave was also particularly strange. It was as if bathing in the winter sun, and it was particularly warm. I've seen a ghost. Black Zetsu, who was in Kagaya's sleeve, was stunned for a long time, then the corners of his mouth squirmed as he said in surprise. It's not that he hasn't seen the Susanoo of the Uchiha clan before. It gives people a pure feeling of evil, full of endless destruction. The original meaning of Kansusanu was destruction. The Kansusanu in front of him was very gentle, and it didn't give the feeling of depression and despair, but infinite vitality. There is no need to be surprised. It is also the first time I used the awakening state of glinting fruit. It is normal that you don't know. I am invincible in this state. With a little golden light in his eyes, Dustless's loud voice resounded through the sky. The reason why Kinsusanu was so different was very simple. Dustless in the awakening state of glinting fruit, and Kinsusanu was naturally different. Light is an extremely contradictory thing. Destruction and rebirth exist together. So Kansusanu was the same. Under Kagaya's astonished gaze, Wu Chen's expression turned cold. Susanoo raised its arm high, and as if it had received the command of God, the light particles from all over the world all poured into its arm. How could this happen? Looking at the thing formed in Dustless's hand in horror, Kagaya's face changed dramatically and became gloomy. Chapter 378. Kagaya's face was full of astonishment. Her calm heart had been settled for thousands of years, and it was calm like stagnant water. At this moment, her heart was like a stormy sea. Damn kid, I should have killed him secretly at the beginning. It's a mistake to grow to this day. Black Zetsu stared at the light ball held in Kinsusanu's hand. He was composed of black liquid matter and said with hatred. At the same time, he did not hesitate to curse Uchiha Madara who had died. Yes, it was indeed a mistake not to get rid of him. Huey lowered her head, her eyes flickering with a strange light. She tried her best to pretend to be calm, but everyone could hear the regret in her voice. It's all my fault. Black Zetsu sighed in the sleeve, full of helplessness. At the same time, he changed the thread of discussion and said tentatively, Mother, this guy's strength is so strong. It's not a bad thing for us to walk on thin ice. Black Zetsu's voice made Kagaya slightly stunned. After a while, she nodded silently. Although there's a suspicion of inviting a wolf into the house, it's still a feasible plan. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. That woman's goal is all living things, including me. This little brat called Wu Chun is also her prey, especially someone with such shocking strength like him. That B***-starred woman absolutely has no reason to let him go. After all, this is the blood that makes her stronger. Kagaya's mind fell into memories, recalling the mysterious woman who had invaded this land. Her face was gloomy. It was because she was not the opponent of that woman that she released the big illusion of infinite Tsukuyomi to the whole world and turned all human beings into her soldiers to fight against the enemy. Damn, it's hot. Black Zetsu in the sleeve groaned and stared at the light ball in the hand of perfect form, Kinsusanu, full of fear. The principle of this technique seems to be the same as Mother's expansion truth-seeking ball. The sky for hundreds of miles was shrouded in golden flashes. The blazing temperature eroded the void. Because of the light, destruction and new life coexisted. Looking into the distance, Kinsusanu was holding a huge light ball in his hand. It was as terrifying as the sun. constantly absorbing the photons of the outside world to expand its size. Anything that came into contact with it would instantly evaporate. On the other hand, the world inside the light sphere was warm, peaceful, and full of vitality. It was as if as long as this devastated world was destroyed, the constantly expanding new world inside the light sphere would replace it. I have an immortal body. She stared fearlessly at the ball of light that was getting closer and closer, or rather, the sun that was getting closer and closer. At the same time, her aura rose and her face was solemn. It was as if she was ready to fight to the death with Dustless. But in Black Jew's ears, his confidence was lacking. As the saying goes, there's always someone stronger than the strong. If Kagaya was really undying and fearless, there would be no need for her to waste infinite Tsukuyami to create her own soldiers to fight the invaders from the other world. Just like Uchiha Madara, he didn't see Kagaya's peerless talent and thought that he was invincible. In fact, in Kagaya's eyes, he was just a clown. This world is an important nursery for me. Let's change to another world to fight to the death. Kagaya's line of sight expanded, and the situation of the entire world was visible at a glance. She didn't care about Dustless. Her slender fingers elegantly stretched out of her sleeve, and with a flick of her fingers, ripples splashed in the void. In an instant, an extremely overbearing aura overflowed from her body, and Kagaya transformed into a peerless goddess who controlled everything in the world. Time and space were rapidly distorted. With a delicate shout, the world in front of her suddenly began to shift and become a strange world. Heaven's defense. The world reflected in her line of sight was completely different, and it became an unknown, mysterious space full of dissolved acid. Dustless was suddenly forcibly pulled into this strange world. Plop! Caught off guard, Kinsusinu fell directly into the ocean full of acid. The invincible Kinsusinu was dismembered and melted into nothingness in the blink of an eye. Only the golden energy ball that gathered in the sky was left. Want to devour me? Then I'll devour your world of dissolved acid first. With a sinister smile, Dustless's body emerged from the acid sea, and he looked at Kagaya with a gloomy face. At the same time, he waved his hand suddenly, and the huge light ball began to expand at a speed that was difficult to see with the naked eye. Turn into ashes with your world. The golden energy ball expanded without limit, and in a short period of time, its volume was several times larger than before. No matter what it touched, it turned into ashes and evaporated, including the dissolved acid of Kinsusinu, which had previously melted. After boiling for a while, it was still evaporated easily. The constantly expanding golden light created a new space and devoured everything in the original world. It could be said that it was both a creation and a destruction technique. It was completely similar to Kagaya's expansion truth-seeking jade. This was one of the moves that Dustless used the Glint Fruit's awakening state, and Kinsusinu. It was not inferior to Kagaya's expansion truth-seeking jade. This little brat really wants to kill us all. Taking a deep breath, Kagaya clenched her fists and said in a suppressed voice, if it was an ordinary technique, she could absorb it, but light was not a technique. In such a serious situation, there were only two choices. Either she braced herself and was swallowed by the golden light, or she passively avoided the battle. Without thinking, Kagaya directly tore the space and jumped in without hesitation. She was not a masochist. Even if she had an immortal body, she did not dare to fight head-on. And this strange light ball gave her an extremely dangerous feeling. Even if she had an immortal body, she would not be able to recover. Stupid woman, this is what I've been waiting for. Seeing this, Dustless's mouth raised a strange smile. He stared at the closed dark space that had not yet disappeared. His eyes turned and emitted a surge of power. The world-destroying light ball disappeared along with Dustless. Chapter 379. In a strange space full of ice and snow, the void was distorted and ripples spread out. The small vortex gradually enlarged, and a figure drilled out of it. Taking a closer look, it was Kagaya who was forced to retreat by Dustless. The ability of light, it's really tricky. That kid with a mortal body can steal the ability of a god. It's really enviable. Clenching her fists, a pleasant voice of admiration sounded in the void. The soft magnetic voice, full of admiration, lingered in the sky for a long time without dispersing. There was no one in the boundless ice and snow world. There's no doubt that the person who spoke is Kagaya. Thinking of Dustless's strange move, she sincerely sighed. Mother, that Flash kid is our enemy. Black Zetsu in the robe didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Kagaya's words made him speechless, although he also quite appreciates Dustless. After all, to be able to rely on his own strength to fight Kagaya, the ancestor of Chakra, is not something a mortal can do. But in the final analysis, the two sides have different standpoints and are destined to be enemies. Of course I know this. Hearing this, Kagaya faintly responded. After all, their standpoints are different. For Dustless, she only appreciates him and has no other complicated thoughts. That kid actually wants to give it to me. Thinking of Dustless's arrogant words before, Kagaya's murderous intent was awe-inspiring. Dustless shamelessly said that he would put a collar on her. This is no longer a simple insult. It's a direct slap in the face, trampling on her dignity. All living things are under my control. A mere ant wants to possess me. A child of a concubine doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. With a snort, Kagaya's murderous intent was awe-inspiring. Dustless's ambition to become the Jinchuriki of the ten-tailed beast also means that Kagaya will lose her freedom again and live in the cage built for her by Dustless. Kacha, a powerful energy fluctuation suddenly came from the void, and the calm horizon suddenly twisted. The small vortex gradually enlarged as if it was being torn apart by some special power. In the blink of an eye, a dark black hole nearly 1,000 meters in size could be clearly seen. After a few breaths of time, it was filled with golden light. An unprecedented golden ball of light fell with Dustless's voice and swallowed Huey. The life and death of the people of this world have nothing to do with me, and the fate of whoever you decide is also your own will. However, there's one thing that you seem to have not understood. Dustless, who was floating in the sky, came into view. He stared at Huey, who was swallowed by the ball of light, with a contemptuous smile. His pupils dilated, and his cold voice echoed in the void. I'm the one who controls your life. Your life is in my hands, not the heavens. As soon as he finished speaking, the world of ice and snow was swallowed by the energy ball that was magnified without limit. Everything that came into contact with the ball of light was annihilated and turned into nothingness. At the same time, a new and unfamiliar space was born. You will never understand in this lifetime. Retracting his gaze, Dustless's eyes were calm again. Huey would never understand how he invaded, but in fact, it was very simple. Back then, when he defeated Obito in the system, Dustless obtained all of Obito's abilities, including his Mangekyo ability. The moment Huey used Heaven's defense, he used God's might to swallow the golden energy ball and put it into a different space. At the same time, he used God's might again to resonate with Huey's space. That was how he invaded. The process was simple and direct, but in fact, it was extremely difficult. The gap between the techniques had to be grasped very accurately. Gone with the wind with your ambition. Farewell, Huey. A new world was born in a different space. Flowers, trees, birds, and beasts were all there. The fresh air of nature rushed into the ear and nose, and a strange sense of familiarity arose spontaneously. It was completely different from the previous world of snow. When he looked up, he saw that the entire world had undergone a tremendous change. It was different from the truth-seeking jade, but the principle was almost the same. The truth-seeking jade was a transformation of the 7 natures of the 5 elements and yin and yang. Light was a unique, special attribute, and it could be said to be able to destroy and create the world. This old monster is really troublesome. Scratching his head with a headache, Wu Chen's eyes flashed with surprise. Following his line of sight, No one could remain calm when they saw the scene in front of them. Being attacked by Dustless's sudden attack, Huey was caught off guard and was hit. Her body was constantly swallowed by the golden light ball. What was shocking was that while she was being swallowed, her body was rapidly recovering. The next second after being annihilated, a new body was condensed. Imprisoning her in my body, I should be able to do the same. Dustless's eyes were shining, and the covetousness in his eyes was undisguised. His gaze was naked and direct, and it was full of longing. Mysterious runes appeared all over his body, and the ancient sound of Sanskrit drifted out. An ancient aura crossed the eternal space and quietly descended to the world. Looking up, Dustless's body changed strangely again. The light was thousands of feet long, and it was like a shining person covered in the sun. His whole body was covered with endless devouring power that could suck the vast universe. Just as he was about to absorb Huey into his body, another change occurred. Suddenly, weak ripples splashed in the void, and the weak ripples merged into the void. It was silent and extremely weak, like a breeze that was not worth mentioning. The moment it came into contact with Dustless, the situation changed dramatically. The weak ripples turned into a destructive storm that annihilated the sky. Time and space were distorted beyond recognition, and it was a mess. Dustless, who didn't realize it, was hit by an unprecedented attack and was directly thrown out. It's not Otsutsuki Kagaya. This special power is not chakra, nor does it belong to the category of immortal technique, let alone taijutsu. His face changed dramatically, and he stared at the dark space in front of him. Where his line of sight focused, he could clearly see countless blood mist filling the air. The majestic power that crushed the sky made even Dustless's calmness stunned. On the contrary, Huey, who escaped from Dustless's awe-inspiring attack, had an ugly expression on her face, and there was a faint fear in her eyes. Chapter 380. Taking a deep breath, Dustless forcibly suppressed the shock in his heart. His pupils overflowed with blood as he stared at the black hole in front of him, and his eyes flashed with horror. Breaking the void with a snap of the fingers. Are you kidding me? Even with Dustless's unchanging heart, he was shocked beyond words. He and Kagaya, including Uchiha Bito, can use space ninjutsu at will, but there is an essential difference between breaking the void with brute force. To some extent, the reason why Dustless can tear the space is because of the ability of Kimui, and the mysterious enemy who suddenly appeared is completely with his own pure strength. Especially the airwave that just bounced him away, Dustless felt that he was particularly fragile, no different from a lonely boat in the sea, as long as the other party can pinch him to death. No matter who you are, people who disturb my good things will end up the same death. Dustless's Rinnegan was filled with endless killing intent. His tone was as cold as ice. He is not the kind of person who will resign himself to adversity. This is his belief in life. Being slapped in the face and not biting back. This is not his style of seeking death. And the word fear is not in Dustless's dictionary. Dustless's Rinnegan opened wide, and the focus of his sight was the bottomless black hole. The surging eye power with the anger of Dustless surged out. Ninjutsu has no limit. It is completely different from person to person. The strong is strong, and the weak is weak. Mahabharata. In the center of the black hole, invisible ripples with white light spread out, and the boiling airwaves swept away the fallen leaves, dispersing the endless darkness and blood mist. And in the blink of an eye, the sky was restored to clear. It's just SOSO. Seeing the black smoke being swallowed by the airwaves, Dustless's mouth raised a smile. In less than a moment, the smile on the corner of the mouth directly stiffened. The darkness and blood mist that had been swallowed by the Mahabharata boiled up again. Its momentum was monstrous, covering the sky. It was so arrogant that it was almost liquefied. It was extremely oppressive. Dustless seemed to hear the sharp screams of 10,000 ghosts, and his mind was filled with a roar. After a few breaths of time, he regained his clarity. He stared at the black hole surrounded by blood mist with a gloomy and fearful expression. Little brat, that woman is not as simple as you think. There are 3,000 universes, 3,000 worlds, and thousands of races in the vast universe. There are countless experts. I am a god, and similarly, there are gods who are stronger than me. The space beside him shattered silently, and a beautiful figure jumped out from it. It was Huey G, who was holding a sharp bone. She landed beside Dustless with a serious expression. The voice was gentle and pleasant. It was undoubtedly Kagaya. Moving his feet, he turned around and examined Huey G. Wuchen frowned. This fellow was actually unscathed and full of energy. Of course, she was not completely unscathed. At the very least, Huey G's face was pale. So what? The sky is high. When the time comes, as long as I take you, I will be able to live freely in the world. Even if you are a god, you will not be able to stop my progress. Looking at Huey G expressionlessly, Dustless's eyes were filled with death light. Just as he was about to swallow her and fly away, a sudden voice startled Dustless. Thousands of years have passed, but you still haven't changed. A light and teasing voice quietly spread. The sound wave that came was filled with the smell of blood, and a fiery red, demonic figure came into view. Dustless frowned. This dense, murderous aura made him feel like he was in purgatory. Huh? The light voice was a little surprised. After silently observing for a while, it said with a teasing tone, Huey, you are an old monster who has lived for thousands of years. You actually have this kind of fetish. You stole an energetic Mahabharaya? Bang! The fiery red figure was directly blown up by the invisible airwave. The whole body turned into a demonic blood mist, and the blood beads scattered in the void. The strange blood beads floated in the void, and suddenly emitted a dark red blood light. It was like the summons of God, and once again reassembled to form the previous figure. The fairy-like pretty face appeared again. Her red lips were raised, and her sight also fell on Wu Chen's body. Her eyes, which were as resplendent as gemstones, flashed with surprise. TSK, TSK, no wonder you old witch would like him. He is strong, and his eyes are not weaker than yours. TSK, TSK. If it were me, I might also choose such a spouse as my husband, a strange voice sounded. The beautiful woman in red did not care about the situation. She completely ignored Dustless and Huey and muttered to herself. The pleasant voice was deliberately amplified and lingered in the void for a long time without dissipating. What strange ninjutsu! It seems to be similar to the ability of my glint fruit. It can also ignore physical attacks. As a man, Dustless's skin was as thick as the city wall. He turned a deaf ear to the woman in red's ridicule and thought secretly in his heart. However, the thin-skinned Huey couldn't keep her face. As the goddess of Uno, she could treat it as a fart and pretend that she didn't hear anything. Dustless, the person involved, was indeed present. Naturally, he had to take care of his face. The bone spear in his hand surged with cold light, and the space in front of him shattered. He jumped into the dark, mysterious space. When he reappeared, he was already beside the woman in red. The bone blade in his hand rose and fell, and directly slashed towards the neck of the woman in red. The edge of the blade could easily flatten large mountains. After thousands of years, you still haven't changed at all. The woman in red was shocked, and her face was calm. Obviously, she knew that Huey would suddenly attack, and there was a smile in her red eyes. Her dress trembled, overflowing with dark red bloodlight. The luster condensed into a prison and bound Huey in it. I've already figured out this trick of yours 1,000 years ago. The woman in red's eyes turned, and she was extremely proud. No matter who you are, whether she is the sacred tree or Jubi, Otsutsuki Kagaya, they're all part of my power. Those who touch them without permission will be killed without mercy. Golden Wheel Reincarnation Explosion. Chapter 381. There was no doubt that the owner of the domineering voice was Dustless. This guy, staring at the boundless golden light swords, The woman in red frowned. Her face was no longer as calm as before. Instead, a hint of caution appeared on her delicate, jade-like face. At the same time, the golden light sword that was about to cut the entire world in half came down. Child's play. Looking up at the light beam that was about to cut her in half, the woman in red's expression was indifferent. She lifted her slender fingers slightly, revealing her snow-white wrist. A bloody light rose from the ground and headed straight for the light beam above her head. The bloody light flew into the air and underwent a shocking change. It suddenly exploded, forming a red barrier that was as thin as a cicada's wing and covered the entire sky. The ordinary-looking red barrier was extremely weak and fluttered with the wind. Poochie! The invincible golden light beam came and inevitably slashed the crimson barrier. She thought that it would directly explode, but the truth was the opposite. The barrier was extremely tough. Under the ferocious impact, it displayed an unimaginable elasticity. Not only did it not break, but it also bounced off the light beam. How can such a weak move be defeated? The woman in red's eyes were filled with pride. Just as she was about to ruthlessly mock Dustless, a special energy fluctuation suddenly came from beside her. Slightly stunned, she subconsciously turned around. The scene that greeted her eyes almost made her go crazy. Unknowingly, Huey and Dustless were standing side by side. Cunning brat. The woman in red's pretty face turned ugly. Her eyes were filled with murderous intent as she glared at Dustless. Endless murderous intent was not concealed at all. A rapidly oppressive aura raged out like a tide, pressing down on Dustless and Huey. Let's put aside our grudge for now and deal with her first. Turning his head and glancing at Huey, Dustless said coldly. Although he helped her out just now, he did not expect such a proud and strong woman like Huey to bow her head and thank him. Hearing this, Huey only indifferently glanced at Dustless. You and her are both ambitious wolves. Both of you want to devour me and take me for your own. It also happened to coincide with what Dustless was thinking. Huey G's brows were filled with coldness, and she did not appreciate it. In her opinion, Dustless and the red-clothed woman in front of her were jackals of the same tribe. They all coveted her power. Dustless's eyes flashed with displeasure, and his expression turned gloomy. The strength of this mysterious invader was terrifying. In fact, he didn't want to join forces with Huey, but he had no choice. This woman was too terrifying. If he didn't join forces with Huey, it wasn't impossible for both of them to die here. Mother, the current situation is serious. Even if you ask a tiger for its skin, there's no way. If you fall into the hands of Uchiha Dustless, you will have a chance to make a comeback. If you fall into the hands of that woman, I am afraid that you will never be able to break out of the cage. Seeing that Huey was not interested in Dustless's proposal, Black Zetsu suggested tentatively, and at the same time changed the thread of discussion. You should know the ability of that woman. If you're swallowed by her, it means that you will completely enter the end. Even the immortal body can't escape her decay and erosion. Please think twice before you act. The immortal body is useless. What is the origin of that woman? His expression froze, and the mysterious red-clothed woman in front of him was labeled as more dangerous. From the tone of Black Zetsu, the immortal body of Huey could be easily annihilated. This, Black Zetsu's tone was hesitant, as if he was considering whether to tell the truth of the matter to Dustless. After pondering for a while, he said, She and Mother came from the same land. She was Mother's life and death enemy since 1,000 years ago. This woman's means are also extremely cruel. Don't look at her gentle face. She is extremely cruel. Thinking of the past, Black Zetsu's tone was full of fear, and he said hoarsely, Her ability is very strange. She can swallow everything. All creatures are nourishment for her to become stronger. Even Mother's immortal body can be swallowed. Black Zetsu's tone was trembling. Obviously, he wasn't lying. Making everything in the world into her own nourishment? Her means are really ruthless. No wonder she has such a terrifying, murderous intent. Hearing this, Dustless's eyes solidified, and the murderous intent in his eyes was awe-inspiring. Hinata, Haruo, Conan, and the other girls were still fighting with the enemy in the shinobi world. If he let the tiger return to the mountain, it means that Haruo and the other girls will become her meal. Dustless will never allow this to happen. Even if we join forces, it's useless. This woman's means are extremely strange. Her ability is similar to yours. She can also ignore most of the physical attacks. Kagaya suddenly said, agreeing with Black Zetsu's previous suggestion. Although Black Zetsu's previous words were unpleasant, the reality was as he said. Falling into the hands of Dustless, they may be able to break out of the cage in the future. Being swallowed by this woman means the complete end. Not necessarily. Hearing that Kagaya chose to cooperate, Dustless breathed a sigh of relief. If this woman is arrogant to the end, there is no other way in the end except to die. It's good that she's immune to physical attacks, but we are not without means to subdue her. The corner of his mouth raised into a confident description. Dustless gave a feeling of extraordinarily bright, full of vitality. Looking at the woman in red, his voice was resolute and decisive. We can use Rikudo, Chibaku Tensei, to seal her. The power of Rikudo, Chibaku Tensei, used by Dustless and Kagaya together, is self-evident. At the beginning, the Rikudo, Chibaku Tensei, used by Otsutsuki Himura and Otsutsuki Hagoromo, could easily seal Kagaya. Now, Kagaya and Kuroda joined forces to use the Rikudo. Chibaku Tensei can easily seal Kagaya. Kagaya's expression froze slightly, and only then did she realize that the kid in front of her, who is thousands of years younger than her, also has Rinnegan and Tensegan. It's not impossible to defeat the woman in red. Chapter 382. Dustless's expression was calm, and his eyes were burning with fighting spirit. The depression in his heart turned into an endless fighting spirit. He was like an unsheathed divine sword that could destroy the world, cutting through all obstacles and sweeping through everything. The awe-inspiring fighting spirit soared into the sky, and even the air was being oppressed. Uchiha Dustless. Kagaya glanced at Dustless from the corner of her eyes, and a look of surprise flashed in her eyes. Facing such a desperate situation, Dustless could still maintain such a high fighting spirit, which really surprised her. First, test her, then find a loophole and seal it. After staring at the woman in red for a while, Dustless whispered. Without waiting for Kagaya to react, his body flashed with golden light, and a straight divine rainbow whizzed out. When he reappeared, he was already behind the woman in red. The sword in his hand was sharp and ruthless, and it directly slashed towards the woman in red's head. Pucci. Dustless's expression was cold, and his killing intent soared to the sky. He did not hesitate to ruthlessly destroy the woman. The beautiful figure was cruelly split into two, turning into a bloody mist and countless dark red blood beads. Little brother, you really don't know how to be gentle with a woman. I really hope to have a wonderful night with you. In the world where I live, they all call me Ming, you immortal fairy. My real name is Mo Luoyue. Her voice was filled with resentment, and her tone was filled with endless charm. Accompanied by a burning fragrance, it poured into the heart of one's heart, and the meaning behind it made one's imagination run wild. The blood beads condensed again, and Mo Luoyue, who was intact, smiled. There was a sincere smile on her mouth, but Mo Luoyue's methods were extremely ruthless. Her slender hand reached out of her sleeve, and a bloody mist floated out of her palm. It was filled with endless devouring power, as if it wanted to swallow Dustless whole. Rabbit hair needle. Dense, sharp hairs surged out rapidly, heading straight for the red-robed woman's back. They were as sharp as needles, trying to pierce through Mo Luoyue's body. She did not dare to ignore Huey G's existence. Although Mo Luoyue had the ability to defeat Huey G, she did not dare to borrow Huey G's attack with her physical body. Huey G was not as strong as her. but she was also a monster who had reached the level of God. His blood-red eyes flashed with determination as his body exploded, turning into endless blood mist, easily dodging Huey's attack. Heaven's defense. Seeing this, Huey sneered. With a gentle wave of her hand, the world in front of her seemed to be forcibly pulled into a different time and space. A shocking change occurred. Blazing heat spread between heaven and earth. The void turned fiery red, and boiling lava flowed on the ground. It had become a magma space. The scattered droplets of blood emitted a demonic light. Moliue's figure condensed once again, bringing with it a chilling, killing intent. She clenched her jade-like hand into a fist and punched out without hesitation. Boom, boom, boom. As the seemingly ordinary punch landed, the space shattered and the void trembled. A long and narrow crack was blasted open in the horizon. The scattered fist force devoured everything. The power of the aftershock directly pierced through the rolling lava and turned the lava on the ground into nothingness. It was just a casual punch, but the area of destruction reached half the world. Huey naturally hid in a different space to avoid the limelight. Seems like that strange move that ignores physical attacks is not invincible. She lifted her gaze and stared at the invincible Moliue, who was looking down at Dustless. There was some hope in her hopeless eyes. Strong chakra waves erupted from her body as she rose from the ground. You are courting death. The murderous aura in Moliue's blood-red eyes exploded. When Moliue saw Wu Chun charging forward without any fear, a sinister look flashed across her pretty face. There was also a hint of doubt in her eyes. Wu Chun was charging over with his original body this time. He did not use the power of light. Don't worry, I will not kill you so early. I will beat you half to death and then devour you. Moliue no longer pondered about the reason. Her expression was cold, and her seemingly weak fist struck out. No matter what tricks Dustless and Huey had up their sleeves, it was useless in the face of absolute power. Destructive fist waves rushed out, and the repaired space exploded again with a loud bang. It was extremely terrifying. Divine might. Looking at the destructive fist force calmly, Dustless smiled faintly. His body turned into a whirlpool and swallowed himself into a different space. He easily dodged the whistling fist wave. As the attack missed, the one who suffered was naturally the earth. Accompanied by a loud roar, the devastated earth once again burst open. A ravine that stretched for thousands of miles was clearly visible, dividing the entire world into two halves. Two ants from a remote village. They're not strong, but they have a lot of strange abilities. Seeing this, Moliue's expression was extremely gloomy. At this moment, she was like a child with infinite strength. Dustless and Huey were like slippery loaches that could avoid fatal attacks every time. However, after devouring the two of you, I will be able to use all of your strange abilities. Her dark face was full of joy like a blooming flower. It was extremely beautiful. Dustless's light ability was especially attractive to Moliue. It was even more attractive than Huey's ten-tailed beast. Suddenly, there was a strange energy fluctuation behind her. It was so weak that it was almost negligible. However, Moliue, who had an extremely strong perception, still sensed that someone was ambushing her. The space cracked, and a figure emerged from the dark ancient space. It was Huey. I knew that the two of you would attack me from the front and back. What's the use of such a pedantic strategy in front of a god? Stupid. Sensing Huey attacking from behind, Moliue revealed a cold smile. At the same time, blood mist floated in her hand and condensed into a dark purple blood blade. How did you heal after being cut in half? I'm really looking forward to this scene. Moliue smiled evilly. The moment Huey came close, she turned around and the dark purple blood blade in her hand pierced through Huey's body. Chapter 383. Moliue's expression was cold. Huey had been her archenemy for thousands of years. Of course, she held a disdainful and jealous attitude towards Huey G. She had relied on her own strength to cultivate bitterly, while Huey G had relied on external forces to obtain her strength. She had eaten the fruit of the divine tree to obtain godlike strength and was on par with Imoluiwe. Even gods had anger, and Imoluiwe was no exception. At the same time, because of her special physique, as long as she devoured the enemy, she could obtain all the abilities of the other party. Imoluiwe, who was jealous of Kagaya's ability, began to invade the ninja world, and the war 1,000 years ago began. Kagaya, who relied on external forces to enter the realm of gods, was naturally not Imoluiwe's opponent and was suppressed. Kagaya had no choice but to use the infinite Tsukuyomi to resist Imoluiwe and her subordinates. 1,000 years of grievances and entanglements ends here. Seeing the purplish-red blade pierce through Huey G's body, Imoluiwe's lips curled up into a smile. Just as she was about to see how Huey G's body was repaired, her eyes widened as she stared at Imoluiwe in shock. The place where she was cut in half was only emitting a faint golden light. Her body did not split as expected. Instead, it healed as if Dustless used the elemental transformation ability. The only difference was that the ability that should have belonged to Dustless appeared on Kagaya's body. Not good. She was shocked as an unprecedented danger suddenly came. Her body was about to turn into blood mist again to be immune to physical attacks, but it was too late. The ferocious force had already sent her flying. When she swung her sword to attack Kagaya, it meant that she was slower by a beat and couldn't kill her instantly. This also meant that Imoluiwe was exposed to Kagaya's attack and had no time to dodge. 80 gods, air attack. Thousands of fists, filled with Kagaya's anger, bombarded Liu's delicate body like a rainstorm. One could clearly see Imoluiwe's body being smashed into a bloody pulp. Kagaya seemed to feel that it was difficult to get rid of the monstrous hatred in her heart. Her expression was cold, and her pale face was surging with murderous intent like a demon. With a wave of her hand, tens of thousands of rays of light were released. As expected, it's a pretty good ability. That fellow is actually able to bestow his ability on me. Feeling the warm light in her body, that special power made Huey unable to stop. Her face was filled with intoxication. The power of light was something that even gods couldn't control. Now that Dustless had given her this power, she would be letting herself down if she didn't savor it. Naturally, Imoluiwe became the focus of Huey's attention. The ability to devour, ripples appeared in the void, and Dustless flew out. His eyes narrowed slightly as he saw Imoluiwe being swallowed by the golden light. His expression was one of astonishment, and he couldn't help but raise his opinion of Huey G. It's your first time using the glint fruit, yet you're already so familiar with it. You're much stronger than me. Recalling the scene when he used the glint fruit, Dustless's expression was rather awkward. Compared to Kagaya, who could control it freely now, there was clearly a difference in dimensions. It doesn't seem to work. With his excellent vision, Dustless could clearly see that an unknown energy emerged from Imoluiwe's body. She transformed into a deep-sea giant beast and easily swallowed and annihilated the previous light bullets. Like a boulder that fell into the deep sea, there was no more movement. However, Huey's ferocious 80 gods air attack had beaten him black and blue. There were fist marks all over his body. However, since he could be called a god, he definitely wasn't someone who could be easily defeated. Emerald light overflowed from Imoluiwe's body and covered her entire body. She was full of vitality and was filled with boundless vitality, repairing her body. Her wounds were rapidly healing. Even if it wasn't as good as Huey G's undying body, it wasn't much worse. I can only seal her. Floating in the air, Dustless landed beside Huey G. A cold light flashed in his eyes as he said coldly, "Even if her body's recovery ability isn't as good as yours, it's still impossible to kill her. Only sealing her is possible," Dustless said solemnly. Although he had used the glint fruit to catch Imoluiwe off guard, This kind of unexpected move could only be used once. I have underestimated the two of you. When exactly? After a while, Emo Luoyue recovered. Her battered body was restored to its original state. Her breathing was stable, and she was full of energy. The only difference was that her face was sickly pale and filled with powerlessness. Thinking of how Huey G had trampled on her, her heart was filled with anger. Boom! Raising her hand slightly, energy waves gathered in her palm. Emo Luoyue punched out mercilessly. The formation was many times more terrifying than before. The void shattered, and everything was destroyed. The entire world shook violently. Dustless used his own ability to devour her once again. Huey G had obtained Dustless's glint fruit ability and didn't need to dodge. She just stood there quietly. The aftermath of the attack swallowed Huey G. Her body glowed with a faint golden light and was directly immune to it. Otherwise, she would have been seriously injured if she took the attack head-on. After the tremor, Dustless reappeared from the alternate space and stood side by side with Huey G. Giving your own power to others. Is this your ability? When did it start? Seeing this, Emoliue's face turned pale. She glared at Dustless and said with a murderous intent. It seemed that if Dustless dared to hide anything, he would be killed on the spot. Do I have to inform you before dealing with you? Black Zetsu couldn't help but mock from within Huey G's sleeve. Dustless didn't say anything. This was the ability of his kaleidoscope's left eye. It could give his own ability to the enemy. The only flaw was that when he gave Huey G the power of the glint fruit, he couldn't activate it himself. Chapter 384. Dustless looked at Marayu with an expressionless face, his heart filled with horror. The strength of this monstrous woman had no limit, and the vigorous and rapidly oppressive aura was clearly rising along with her anger. Their race is very strange. They can endlessly devour the lives of others and turn their abilities into their own. Marayu is a monster that has lived for thousands of years. In her long life of devouring, there must be many capable people who have been devoured by her, Kagaya explained in a deep voice. She knew Marayu far better than Dustless. Dustless nodded slightly. Being able to devour others, turn them into their own blood, and possess their abilities, this kind of innate advantage was indeed unparalleled. It could even be said that she had the same ability as Dustless's system. No matter what, we must seal her. Dustless's expression was cold. Once he and Kagaya were defeated, it meant that the entire ninja world would become this woman's new blood. Dustless was not a saint, and he did not have the heart of a saint. The life and death of people had nothing to do with him, but Dustless regarded Luo, Conan, and Hinata as his family. Dragons have reverse scales, and those who touch them will die. Luo and the others were Dustless's reverse scales. Seal me? Shameless boasting. Marayu laughed coldly, looking at Dustless with blazing eyes. The ability of light was too perfect. In the face of such an extraordinary being that could resist any heaven-defying ability in the world, no one could maintain a calm heart. Suddenly, a towering shadow covered the sky. Dark clouds covered the sun, and the earth darkened. Looking up, it was Dustless and Kagaya's joint truth-seeking ball. Pouring chakra without holding back would inevitably lead to a change in quality. Dustless and Kagaya's joint truth-seeking ball was naturally extraordinary. The rapidly enlarging truth-seeking ball swallowed the world, destroying all things, and at the same time, space was also being created. Naive, when Emo Luoyue saw this, she did not retreat. Instead, she advanced. Ripples appeared in the void as a red figure shot out. A crimson blood blade condensed in her hand as she casually slashed out. The blood-red light was extremely strange and brutal. Along the way, the space exploded. It was incomparably fragile and pulsated with a demonic luster. The moment it came into contact with the expanding truth-seeking jade, it emitted boundless light and directly swallowed the truth-seeking jade. I told you, this kind of trick is useless. Luoyue chuckled as she exhaled a cold breath. Just as she was about to say something to discourage Dustless and Huey, a thin figure suddenly appeared. Sorry, I didn't expect her to be of any use. Like a ghost, Dustless landed in the void several meters away from Luoyue. At the same time, he said to Huey in a voice that only the two of them could hear, I will find a way to force her back. You will ambush her from the back. When the time comes, I will activate the power of Yang, and you will activate the power of Yin to seal her with Chibaku Tensei. Dustless said with a flash of determination and a strange, unnatural look in his eyes. You will force her back? Hearing this, Huey's eyes flashed with a strange look. Her tone was filled with doubt. She didn't think that Dustless had the strength to force Luoyue back. There is no need to force yourself. Her gaze fell on Dustless's face. Seeing how determined he was, Huey didn't say anything else. She waved her hand and shattered the space, jumping in without hesitation. Son of a concubine, you think too highly of yourself with your own strength, and, at the same time, you look down on me too much. Since you've delivered yourself to my doorstep, then I'll accept your body with disrespect. Luoyue's blood-red eyes flashed with a demonic luster as she stared greedily at Dustless's body. Her gem-like eyes stared at Dustless's body. As long as she devoured Dustless's body, she would be able to obtain everything about Dustless. Bring on if you can. I promise I won't run or hide. The corners of Wu Chen's lips curled into a smile when he heard this. His calm and indifferent expression disappeared and was replaced by a look of ridicule. His bright and scorching eyes met Luoyue's with a look of ridicule. Anyone could hear the provocation in his voice. You don't know what death is. Hearing this, Luoyue's face fell. Her blood-red eyes were filled with anger. Gods were not to be provoked, especially a mortal like Dustless. Although she didn't like Huey, she was still on the same level as her. The Wuchen in front of him was merely immortal. I will take everything from you. There is no use in running. Luoyue sneered. A bone-piercing, murderous aura seeped out of her body. She was obviously not joking. She moved like the wind and crossed layers of space in an instant. Even though it wasn't a beam of light, just the strength of her body moving forward was not inferior to Dustless's beam of light. In fact, it might even be better. In the blink of an eye, she arrived beside Dustless. See, I didn't run, did I? Seeing Missouri Luoyue close in on him, Dustless said with a smile. There was no trace of chakra either. In the depths of his eyes, there was a hint of slyness and viciousness. Obviously, Dustless had no intention of waiting for death. Are you scared out of your wits and give up resisting? Luoyue frowned and stared at Dustless, who was so close to her. A sneer flashed across her eyes. Her Dustless was much stronger than her. It was normal for her to feel despair or be scared out of her wits. Moreover, at such a close distance, she didn't believe that Dustless had the means to subdue her. It was even more impossible for him to force her. However, even if you give up, I won't let you go. Her white hand approached Dustless. Endless gravitational force surged out, trying to swallow Dustless whole. Bam! Strangely, white smoke suddenly burst out from Dustless's body. Countless more strange figures emerged. Luoyue's face turned ashen when she saw this. The veins on her forehead bulged. She wanted nothing more than to tear Dustless into pieces. However, she did not hesitate to dodge and kick him. Looking up, she saw a group of naked men chasing after Luoyue, as expected. Fortunately, I had the foresight to learn this technique from Uzumaki Naruto in advance. Dustless's lips curled into a smug smile. It was as bright as the stars. He was used to being aloof. It was not impossible for him to be a little shameless. Chapter 385. At the back, Kagaya, who was waiting for the ambush, was stunned. She looked at Luoyue, who was retreating in several naked figures, and her face twitched fiercely. Shameless, with a snort, Kagaya retracted her gaze. Out of sight, out of mind. Her impression of Dustless dropped to negative. It's shameless, but it's very effective. Black Zetsu never thought that Dustless would use the legendary ultimate ninjutsu, seduction jutsu. The method was not complimentary, but the effect was unusually useful. As long as it was a woman, especially for ambitious gods like Kagaya and Mo Luoyue who were extremely possessive, the way mortals looked at them was a kind of silent blasphemy. Not to mention being surrounded by a group of men who didn't even cover their bodies. It was worse than death. Dustless was also taking advantage of the mentality of these gods who thought highly of themselves. If the other party was an ordinary female ninja with hundreds of battles of nerves, she would most likely choose to ignore them. Whoosh! A sharp sound broke through the air, and in the blink of an eye, a figure swept out. The speed was as fast as lightning, and it went straight to the back of Mo Luoyue. It was Kagaya. Although she scoffed at Dustless's method, at this moment, Mo Luoyue was full of flaws. Such a rare opportunity was fleeting, and there was no reason for her to let it go. She raised her lily-white hand slightly, revealing the pattern of the moon. "How can I let you do as you wish?" Sensing Kagaya's sneak attack, Mo Luoyue sneered. Strong energy fluctuations erupted from her body, turning into a super-strong hurricane that raged out. The naked men who came out of the seduction jutsu collapsed and were annihilated. The blade-like hurricane didn't intend to stop. Instead, it expanded and swallowed both Dustless and Kagaya, trying to stop the two's plan to surround her. Final struggle. Kagaya and Dustless's eyes flashed with indifference. Kagaya simply used Dustless's glint-glint fruit to ignore the blade storm that enveloped her body. The only difference was that Dustless, who lost the glint-glint fruit, was controlled by the red storm. "Looks like your ceiling pincer attack plan has failed." A smile appeared on Molu's face. She glanced at the temporarily suppressed Dustless, and a smug look appeared in her eyes. Her voice was much more relaxed than before. "If I get rid of you first, that brat won't be able to hold the fort alone. You'll be in the bag." Hearing this, a rare faint smile appeared on Huey's indifferent face. She silently raised a finger and pointed behind Mo Luoyue. The haggard figure was clearly visible. Seeing Huey looking at her with a smile that wasn't a smile, Mo Luoyue's smile froze. She turned around suspiciously, only to see that annoying smiling face. Her mouth couldn't help but twitch as her perfect face flushed red. Naturally, it was Dustless. What a shocking move. If it wasn't for Shinwei, I might have really been killed. Pretending to be fearful, Dustless said with a face full of fear. The smile on his face was natural, and it was obvious that he deliberately said that to disgust Mo Luoyue. Staring at Mo Luoyue, Dustless's expression was cold. He raised his right arm, revealing the image of the sun. Huey did the same and attacked Mo Luoyue simultaneously. "Chibaku Tensei." The cold voice resounded through the clouds. The two attributes of yin and yang merged together, and everything in the world was reenacted. The world stopped spinning, and everything fell into confinement. In the void, countless mountain fragments appeared out of nowhere and circled around Dustless and Huey. Where there's room for mercy, there's room for mercy. I can swear that I'll never invade this world again. All of her power was imprisoned in an instant. She couldn't mobilize any energy, even if she used all of her strength. Mo Luoyue gritted her teeth and put on a pitiful look. She begged Dustless for mercy. "As long as you let me go, I can agree to any condition. If I violate this oath, may the heavens and earth destroy me." TSK, TSK. Even the arrogant Mingyu, immortal fairy, has such an ugly appearance? Huey mocked and ridiculed, looking at Mo Luoyue with eyes full of disdain. "Really?" Dustless looked at Mo Luoyue with a smile. Hesitation appeared on his face, as if he was hesitating whether to agree to Mo Luoyue's condition. "Are you crazy?" Hearing this, Huey's expression changed drastically. She glared at Dustless and suddenly remembered the seduction technique that Dustless cultivated. She gritted her teeth and said, "You are indeed a man with poor taste. An ordinary man will always be an ordinary man. No matter how strong you are, you can't get rid of the human nature hidden in your bones. Huey's eyes flashed with sadness. Dustless was a man that she could barely accept. But now, he was behaving like a hooligan. Of course, I'm willing to do anything for you, including that kind of thing. She was afraid that Dustless wouldn't understand what she meant. Her face flushed red, and her watery eyes were filled with endless charm. She was like a deadly poison. She breathed out, and her fragrance spread in all directions. Every frown was soul-stirring and extremely enchanting. How can I let you take away my chastity after so many years of slimming down? After deceiving you, I will first tear you into pieces. Malice appeared in the depths of Emoliua's eyes as she thought to herself. Her body moved even more vigorously, hoping to draw out Dustless's ugly nature. Bastard, Huey shouted angrily. She had been pure for many years and naturally didn't feel anything. But this sworn enemy of hers from 1,000 years ago didn't even flirt with her temporary ally in front of her and ignored her. How could Huey continue to remain calm? This was a covert attempt to smear her reputation. Curvy in the front and back. Long legs. Not bad. Sizing up Mou's figure, Dustless nodded inwardly. His eyes were filled with the desire of a wolf. Clearly, he was tempted. Just when Luoyue thought that Dustless would let her off, his words struck her like a bolt of lightning. Her heart was dead silent. Just like what you've said before, you should spare others when you can. How can I forget the way you wanted to devour me when you were in an advantageous position? Let's bury you together with your ambitions. Chibaku Tensei. As soon as the resolute voice fell, the surrounding mountain fragments rushed over rapidly. Chapter 386. The fragments of the mountain drifted in from all directions, and no creature could escape from the boundless gravitational force. The earth cracked as the fragments rushed toward the gravitational field created by Dustless and Huiweji. Are you really so ruthless and heartless? You're worse than a beast. Mou's expression changed drastically as her heart was in turmoil. Her voice was filled with sorrow. An unprecedented god had actually fallen into the hands of two ants. This could be said to be the greatest irony. Even so, Luoyue still hadn't given up on survival. What made him even more speechless was that he hadn't expected that even after he had begged so humbly and was even willing to become a slave, Luoyue still wouldn't let him off. The man in front of her had an indifferent expression and seemed frivolous, but his heart was as cold as an iceberg. When a man is about to die, his words are kind. When a bird is about to die, its cry is sad. How can you be worse than a bird? Also, if I conceal you, I don't think it matters whether you're a beast or not. Dustless retorted with glib words, leaving Luoyue speechless. This was because Luoyue had vowed not to give up until she killed Dustless. Compared to Dustless, who had only sealed her, she was much more of a beast. This was also why Dustless could remain indifferent. I'm not just worse than a bird. Even if I die, I'll drag the two of you down with me, so that we can meet in the underworld. A crazed look flashed across Mou's eyes as she tore away the facade of humility. Her body, which was under her control, began to emit a strange purple glow of blood. Her entire body shriveled up in an instant, like a candle flickering in the wind. Her hair turned white. Her body was pale and powerless, but there was an indescribable pressure that surrounded Dustless's mind. Ripples appeared in his calm heart as his hair stood on end. Could it be that this fellow is... Black Zetsu stared in horror at the purple blood mist emitting from Mou's body. His panicked voice was filled with fear. Just as he was about to speak, he suddenly retreated. Even though his reaction was extremely fast, Black Zetsu's black liquid body was still corroded by the purple blood mist. Whoosh! The white figure retreated in a flash. Of course it was Kagaya. The Chibaku Tensei that she had painstakingly created also disintegrated in an instant. The mountain fragments that came from heaven and earth fell to the ground again. Old Witch, what do you mean? Livid, Dustless glared at Huey G., his killing intent surging. Since Huey G. had withdrawn without being pressed, Mo Luoyue had also broken free from the seal. However, Mo Luoyue still maintained a tired expression, giving off the impression of an old man with one foot in the grave. Dustless's heart, which had been in his throat, finally calmed down. Frowning, he suddenly realized that his body was surrounded by a purplish blood-red light. It was filled with an ominous aura. It was the aura that had seeped out from Mo Luoyue's body. Just as he was about to ask Huey why she left, a painful scream resounded through the sky. "Ah, mother, save me." A tormented scream came from Black Zetsu's mouth. Dustless felt his scalp go numb when he heard it. If even an Iron Man like Black Zetsu couldn't withstand the torture, one could only imagine how terrifying it was. Looking up, Black Zetsu, which was composed of black liquid, had now turned purplish red. Is it because of the purple light from before? Seeing Black Zetsu's pained expression, Dustless's expression changed drastically. Recalling the scene of Black Zetsu being swallowed by the light, he retreated in an attempt to break free from the purple light. The ideal was beautiful, but the reality was cruel. These strange lights automatically followed and silently entered Dustless's body, no longer moving. "It's useless, Black Zetsu. You should know what this is. Even I can't do anything about it." Huey G shook her head and decisively threw Black Zetsu out of her robes. Her eyes flashed with sadness. Although Black Zetsu was not born from her, it was created by the yin-yang escape. So painful, Black Zetsu, who had absorbed the purple light, turned purple, like boiling water, horrifying. Those purple lights are all transformed from her pure energy. If it is eroded, not to mention you, even I will explode. Black Zetsu was still her child, Huey G said with regret. Bang! After struggling for a few seconds, Black Zetsu's body shone brightly, and then it exploded. It didn't heal like before, and it didn't disappear. Damn, old witch. You are ruthless, but do you think you can guarantee your safety by scheming against me like this? The corner of his mouth twitched violently. Dustless's murderous intent was awe-inspiring. His expression was gloomy, and he was aware of the sudden restless power in his body. He roared at Huey G, who was gloating. This insidious woman was obviously deliberately trapping Dustless. A man's words are kind when he is about to die. A bird's cry is sad when it is about to die. Dustless, you and I finally fought side by side. How can you be worse than a bird? Ignoring Dustless's malicious words, Huey G said with a smile, returning Dustless's previous words without missing a word. There was no need to be angry with Dustless, who was about to die. Mo Luoyue was also ignored by Huey G. This terrifying move was equivalent to self-destruction. When Dustless died, she also disappeared. Damned old monster. Dustless's face was livid. He could feel the explosive power in his body, the unstoppable power like a volcano, and the violent fluctuations crushed his body tissues and organs. If it wasn't for the fact that he defeated the Six Paths Abido in the system world and indirectly obtained the power of the Ten Tails in his body, Dustless would have been annihilated by the impact. Because of the huge vitality of the Ten Tails, his internal organs were healed when they were destroyed. This was also treating the symptoms, but not the root cause. If he didn't deal with the violent power in his body, sooner or later, he would be crushed to pieces by this terrifying power like Black Zetsu. Damn it, I only managed to drag one down with me. Looking at Huey G unwillingly, Luoyue's eyes were full of disappointment. Her blood-red eyes were abnormally dim, giving people the feeling that her body was like a willow leaf blown by the wind. Such a terrifying move hurt both the enemy and herself. The power that Mo Luoyue had accumulated for thousands of years was converted into the power of self-destruction. The power was unimaginable. Once it exploded in Dustless's body, the consequences were self-evident. Could it be that I have stepped into the end of my life, Clenching his fists tightly, Dustless took a deep breath. His heart was filled with 100,000 alpacas. Since that strange energy could explode Black Zetsu, he, who had gathered more purple light in his body, couldn't be safe. The end result would be a complete corpse. While he was thinking, the purple light in his body surged like a stormy sea, turning into an endless impact that crushed his limbs and bones. If it wasn't for his strong physique, Dustless's body would have been torn apart in an instant. The burning pain spread to all his nerves. Dustless's expression was abnormally ugly. If he couldn't resist this agitation, he would follow in Black Zetsu's footsteps and disappear without a trace. Boom, boom, boom. Violent vibrations came from within his body. The purple light exploded and continuously attacked Dustless's internal organs, shattering them again and again. Roar, roar, roar. The scorching attack burned Dustless's rationality. Soon, Dustless's eyes turned scarlet. A low roar similar to the dying struggle of a beast came from Dustless's throat. Staring at Huey with murderous intent, Dustless lost his rationality and turned into a beast that only knew how to kill. As for Mo Luoiwe, she had already exhausted her strength and died. In the desolate and strange world, only two figures were left standing, Dustless and Huey. Bastard, shouldn't she be exploding? This state is obviously similar to the simple rampaging of power that has lost control. Huey's face was gloomy. She thought that Dustless and Black Zetsu would end up the same, but the scene in front of her was unexpected. Dustless relied on his strong and solid body to temporarily support the rampaging power in his body. You can hold it for a while, but you can't hold it for a lifetime. I want to see what you can do. The heaviness on her face disappeared. Huey looked at Dustless playfully, as if she saw the most interesting thing. A soul-stirring smile appeared on her iceberg face. She was as beautiful as a fairy, but no one could appreciate it. Fend for yourself. Forgive me for not accompanying you. After looking at Dustless with pity for a while, Huey shook her head and said faintly. She waved her hand gently, and the void in front of her exploded. She stepped into the dark space gracefully. The space gradually closed. Just as it was about to be completely sealed, a black figure invaded. Ka ka ka. The sound of mirrors shattering was suddenly heard. Huey, who was walking in the dark space, was stunned. She stopped in her tracks and turned around subconsciously. What she saw was Dustless with his scarlet eyes. Impossible! He tore the void with his bare hands. How? Bang! Before she finished her sentence, Huey's body was blasted out like a cannonball. The powerful force shook the heavens and the earth, and the entire dark space trembled violently. Ka ka ka! The blue sky exploded. A figure with long silver hair was thrown out of thin air. His body flew back for thousands of feet before he could stop. Huey's face was filled with disbelief as she stared at her sunken chest. Could this guy be controlling Maliyu's power? Huey's throat moved unconsciously. Her eyes were filled with shock and fear. Looking at the deep fist mark on her chest, she retreated instinctively. Dustless's body flew out of the dark space. With a wave of his hand, the space shattered. Dustless's scarlet eyes stared at Huey. His murderous intent spread out like tidal waves. In fact, it was the same as Huey's guess. Dustless was indeed controlling Maliyu's power temporarily. Of course, it could not be considered as complete control. The fact that it went berserk explained everything. Wuchen was only relying on his strong physical body to temporarily control the power of Maliyu. When he was exhausted, it would be the moment when he would be separated forever. Time was of the essence. He had to disperse the majestic power as soon as possible, and Huey was the most suitable target. There's something wrong with his eyes. Based on a woman's intuition, Huey instinctively felt that something was wrong. If Dustless was filled with murderous intent before, his eyes now had a different meaning. That kind of aggressive gaze contained the most primitive ambition of humans. Huey was not affected by worldly affairs, but it did not mean that she did not know what it meant. The purest and most direct possessiveness. Go to hell. Huey, who was shocked and furious, wanted to tear Dustless into pieces. The reincarnation Sharingan on her forehead released endless murderous intent. The mysterious Magatama rotated and twisted. The power of her eyes went wild, and the world in front of her started to change. The unfamiliar world was empty and lifeless. It looked ordinary, but it was obviously different. Dustless and Huey's bodies seemed to be carrying millions of pounds of boulders. They fell to the ground and could not move. Dustless and Huey were the same. Without a doubt, this technique was the gravity space of the defensive heaven. Kill gray bones together. Two sharp bone spurs emerged from the palms of his hands and pierced straight towards Wuchun. Everything that came in contact with them would be annihilated in an instant. Whoa! A strange sound came from the corner of his mouth, mocking Huey's powerlessness. Dustless shot out a blood mist from his hand, and the bone blades collapsed in the blink of an eye. Freak! Seeing this, Huey cursed. Her hair danced and turned into countless sharp thorns. Just as she was about to pierce Dustless into a sieve, a black shadow completely ignored the existence of gravity and rushed over like lightning. He stretched out his hand and easily subdued Huey. "You're courting death." Feeling that her white and tender hand was grabbed by Wuchun, Kagaya became angry out of shame, and her chakra raged out like a flood, hoping to force Wuchun to retreat in his berserk state. "It's useless. My current state was created by you." Dustless returned to normal and said to Huey with a hoarse voice. However, his body was still trembling. It was obvious that he only regained his rationality temporarily. "Let go of me, or else you'll have to bear the consequences." Avoiding Dustless's gaze, Huey warned fiercely. Several truth-seeking jade floated behind her, indicating that she was not joking. "How you treat me is your own business. But I'm in this state because of you. You have to help me solve it." Dustless said firmly, "I don't want to die now, so I can only borrow your body to help me solve the problem. Although I'm sorry, I hope you can only blame yourself." Seeing that Huey was not tactful, Dustless said straightforwardly, "I'm the goddess of Mao. How can I agree with you?" Her eyes were filled with anger that could burn the world. Huey was extremely regretful. If she had told Dustless in advance, he would not have been swallowed by the power of Maluyu and would not have gone berserk. She had shot herself in the foot. It's not up to you to choose. Your only mission now is to use the power of En to help me solve this restless power in my body." Dustless said expressionlessly. His meaning was simple and clear. To put it bluntly, it was a double XIU. He didn't feel guilty at all. This was Huey G's own doing, and she couldn't blame anyone else. Huey was about to refute Dustless when an energy wave came. Suddenly, she felt cold. She did not know when she was exposed to the air. Dustless did not care about what Huey was thinking. He pounced on her. The restless energy wave in his body made him uncomfortable and almost made his body explode. He had to find a suitable person. Chapter 387. Time passed unknowingly, and the Shinobi World War in the outside world also stopped. The Shinobi Allied forces and the White Zetsu Army were all wiped out. Both Hinata and Cheyenne had Tensigen, and Cheyenne and Conan, as well as Red Lotus, were extraordinary. Especially with the help of the corpses of the Hokage, a team of less than 10 people defeated the Shinobi Allied forces and the White Zetsu Army in one fell swoop. Dustless in the different space naturally didn't know about this. At this moment, his consciousness was half asleep and half awake, and he seemed to hear a slight sobbing sound. After an unknown period of time, Wuchun, who was in a daze, finally woke up. Turning his head and staring at Kagaya with a delicate face beside him, Dustless's eyes were filled with a strange color. He seemed to think of something, and the corner of his mouth twitched fiercely. He couldn't wait to slap himself in the face. Staring at the dazzling blood stains on the ground, Dustless knew that Kagaya, this big pit, will be his back from now on. But this old monster, cough, she's quite beautiful. Looking at Huey G's delicate little face, Wuchun couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. Her skin was like ice, and her bones were like jade. She was like a peerless fairy who had fallen from the ninth heaven. Kagaya was a monster for thousands of years. Because of the body of the sacred tree, she was immortal and indestructible, and the years did not leave a trace on her body. Moan, as if sensing the gaze of others, Huey rubbed the corner of her pale eyes. Her entire body was weak. It was obvious that, even though she was a divine tree, she couldn't withstand Wuchen's continuous attacks. After a long while, her bright eyes opened completely, revealing a little confusion and hesitation. Her gaze fell on Wuchen. Her expression was neither happy nor sad, and she didn't say anything. The words at the tip of his tongue were stuck. Wuchen originally wanted to curse out loud. If it wasn't for Huey G taking the opportunity to trick him, this situation wouldn't have happened. Later on, this kind of melodramatic thing wouldn't have happened. It was Kagaya's fault, but Dustless, after all, forcibly took her virginity, and he was not qualified to blame others. Kagaya looked at Dustless faintly, and her eyes were as calm as water. Then she retracted her gaze and waved her hand gently, and her body was wrapped in a simple robe. Thinking of Dustless's ferocious offensive, her eyes flashed with anger. "You'd better not tell anyone about this, otherwise." Humph. The majestic, murderous aura overflowed out of her body, and Kagaya warned him sternly. From her expression, it was not difficult to see that if she was not afraid of Dustless's strength, she would definitely be prepared to fight to the death. In fact, Huey's heart was extremely conflicted. Even if her strength was really comparable to Dustless, she might not be able to raise her butcher's knife when facing him again. "You can let bygones be bygones, but I have something to say. There are some things that must be agreed upon in advance." Staring at Kagaya, Dustless said. His tone was quite soft, but it was unusually firm, and there was no room for disobedience. His tone was resolute and unshakable. Hearing this, Kagaya's face was livid, and she stared at Dustless with uncertainty. The surging, murderous aura broke out of her body like a tide. She didn't expect Dustless to be so insatiable. She didn't haggle over every little thing, but Dustless took advantage of her. "Don't show an angry expression. Your ambition has not been terminated, and it's normal for me to be worried about you." Looking into Kagaya's eyes, Dustless said bluntly. His tone was direct, and he was too lazy to hide it. Even if he had such a relationship with Kagaya, Dustless did not let down his guard and would not let Kagaya do whatever she wanted. Shameless. Clenching her teeth, Kagaya glared at Dustless. Looking at Dustless's calm face, a strange light flashed in her eyes. Her tone was as cold as a mountain as she said sarcastically, "I am a supreme existence above thousands of creatures. Why would I need to live under someone else's roof? You don't have a right to choose." Looking at Kagaya with a smile, Dustless said softly, "No matter what happened before, you are just a canary in my cage. And just now the double, cough cough, you seen it got a lot stronger." Embarrassment flashed in his eyes. Dustless, who wanted to directly talk about dual cultivation, hurriedly changed the topic and said to Kagaya in a daze. The corner of Kagaya's mouth twitched fiercely, and she glared at Dustless with a piercing gaze. Her indifferent face was like a hoodlum's at this moment, and it was especially annoying. Being a status is similar to being a little girl in bed. Of course, there is an essential difference. Her words almost made Kagaya vomit blood. She didn't remember that she wanted to rely on Dustless, especially Dustless, her mortal enemy, took her most important thing. She couldn't wait to tear him into pieces. Of course, it's not without benefits. Looking at Kagaya, a strange light flashed in his eyes. Dustless said faintly, "I can allow you to get the chakra of everyone in the world except my wife and my subordinates. War is cruel, and it's difficult to describe it with words. The injured are often the lowest level of civilians. The casualties are countless. Many ninjas, including the 5 Kages, were seriously injured by the ninjas reincarnated by Kabuto. The shinobi world was full of corpses." With Dustless's permission, Kagaya didn't hesitate to reunite the scattered chakra of the world, and her strength increased sharply. She finally felt a little grateful to Dustless. As Madara said before, Chakra is the source of the world's turmoil. Without this superhuman power, the world is unusually stable. Although fights happen from time to time, and bloodshed is constant, it's much more peaceful than before. It's time to leave. Stimulated by Mara Yuki, Dustless's heart was not limited to this world, and his eyes looked at the world outside the universe, where the world was brighter. People's curiosity is endless, and Dustless is also full of yearning for the mysterious outer space. As for Kagaya, Haruo, and other women, Dustless naturally took them all, including Terumi Mei and Tsunade Senju. They were all seriously injured in the war, and the two of them were inextricably linked to Dustless. Of course, all of them were sealed in the system space. Chapter 388. Luxurious and quiet. In a luxurious villa inlaid with all kinds of shining gems, on a soft, furry bed, there was a pale, black-haired teenager. This person has a handsome face, delicate facial features, and sharp edges. The only difference is that the young man's dress is not flattering. It looks a bit nondescript and weird. However, this strange dress is enough to make all human beings fear and look up. It hurts. After a long time, the black-haired teenager opened his eyes and stared at the luxurious ceiling. He opened his mouth and a stab of pain poured into his mind. The teenager's face was pale. A huge amount of information invaded his mind and turned into a real picture reflected in his pupils. Royce Saint, what kind of idiotic name is this? The voice of surprise and doubt resounded through the empty villa. Anyone could hear the astonishment in the tone, and subconsciously looked at the clothes he put on. Sure enough, it's a celestial dragon. After about a while, the teenager's mouth raised a bitter smile. He was speechless and immediately understood which world he had come to. Dustless, there is no need to complain. Although this identity is notorious, the privileges are envied by others. In his mind, the dissatisfied voice of System Ling, spread, scolding Dustless for not knowing what was good for him. The identity of a celestial dragon in this world is equivalent to the existence of nuclear weapons. Not to mention ordinary civilians, even the kings of some countries, and even the admirals of the Navy are afraid of the celestial dragon. Forget it, this problem is not important, but Dustless rubbed his temples, feeling rather conflicted. Then, he said speechlessly, I didn't expect the lowest family to be so tragic. Their members are so thin that they're almost extinct. Now, I'm the only one left. Through the memories in his mind, Dustless knew that he was the last child of this Royce family. As a descendant of 20 kings, the identity of a celestial dragon can be imagined. However, the Royce family, which has a history of hundreds of years, is now only supported by Dustless alone. The rest of the family members have all died out. Now Dustless's identity is also a 16 or 17-year-old teenager. Of course, Dustless's appearance has not changed at this stage. There's also a fiancée that I've never met. Dustless's expression froze as he delved deeper into his memory. His body twitched a few times, and he could not help but think of the ferocious-looking fat woman who wore a bubble mask and had a big fat belly. His entire body began to tremble uncontrollably. This is interesting. I didn't expect that the celestial dragons, who are called the biggest garbage by human beings, also have a different kind of existence. The corners of his mouth raised slightly, and his face showed a surprised expression. Dustless said with a little surprise. Celestial dragons were also synonymous with trash in his eyes, but the special information in his mind made Dustless frown. There seemed to be something wrong with this world as well. It was definitely not as simple as it seemed on the surface. Who would have thought that my deceased father was actually a great general? Dustless's calm face was heavy, and his tone was slightly doubtful. Not only his deceased father, but even some of his so-called relatives had extraordinary strength. It was the opposite of the garbage that had no strength to truss a chicken. On second thought, Dustless was relieved. As the saying goes, one pole can't kill a group of people. Celestial dragons were indeed garbage, But there were also extraordinary different kinds of existence, such as people like Doflamingo. It seems that celestial dragons still have many unknown secrets, and there are things that the world government is afraid of. After about a long while, Dustless secretly speculated. The status of celestial dragons was higher than the Gorosei. If the identity of the descendant of the creator alone made the world government submit for hundreds of years, it would be unreasonable. The celestial dragons claim to be gods. Naturally, there are some unknown secrets. The 5 elder stars are also ambitious people. If the celestial dragons are a group of wine sacks, how can they bow their heads and be willing to be at the disposal of the celestial dragons? The light voice spread out, and the person who spoke was the system Linger. She continued, "This world is very mysterious. You have to be careful. The 20 kings unified the world 800 years ago, and it was not just by talking. Whether it is the world government, marine headquarters, or even the entire human race, they're extremely disgusted with celestial dragons because they have absolute privileges above all creatures. If someone attacks celestial dragons, a marine admiral will come out. So what? Creak, walking to the window and pushing it open, the cool evening breeze immediately came out. Dustless walked to the balcony and quietly looked down at the Holy Land, Mariewa, under the night view. The giant building in front is the residence of the Gorosei, 5 elder stars, the world's highest power. The evening wind blew his hair messy like grass. If people don't offend me, I won't offend them. If people offend me, I will pay them back 100 times. The voice of the ancient well spread out, staring at the castle-like building in the distance. Dustless said very plainly. He was not interested in the secrets of celestial dragons, including the Mariewa, a national treasure that is enough to shock the world. Living behind the scenes and turning the world upside down, this is barely the only pleasure of Dustless. Roy Saint, it's time for dinner. A voice of fear and horror sounded from the room. Dustless was slightly stunned and turned his head. What came into his eyes was a young girl. She was delicate and pretty, but her watery eyes were full of fear. She didn't even dare to raise her head, and there was a black special shackle around her neck. Obviously, she is Dustless's slave. Kid, what's your name? Turning his head and continuing to look at the waves in the distance, Dustless asked curiously. The girl he met for the first time had a feeling of déjà vu. My name is Boya Hancock. Lowering her head, she didn't dare to look at Dustless's back. She suppressed the fear in her heart and lowered her voice. The laws that punish mortals have no effect on celestial dragons who are gods. Chapter 389. Hearing this, Dustless's eyes flashed with understanding. The corners of his mouth raised slightly, and he looked at Boa Hancock with interest, his eyes as sharp as an eagle's. After a moment of silence, Dustless's eyes dimmed. The future empress was now just a mortal, and there was nothing worthy of Dustless's attention. To put it bluntly, she was just an ant. In Dustless's words, she was extremely mediocre, without any bright spots. Even if she had eaten the devil fruit now, Dustless did not see anything special. Just glancing at Boa Hancock, Dustless left straight away, ignoring her. The room was brightly lit. The slender mahogany table was filled with all kinds of delicacies, and there were countless dazzling dishes. Staring at the dazzling array of food and delicacies, Dustless also had a big appetite for a while. When he was about to open his stomach to eat and drink, the roaring sound resounded through the sky. Boom, boom, boom. Under the cover of the dark night, the serene Mariota burst into flames, the earth shook, and the aftermath spread to a wider area than ever before. Flames of hundreds of feet rose in the air, and the quiet void instantly turned fiery, burning unscrupulously. The temperature of the void increased by dozens of times, melting all the buildings into a solution. Just after the blink of an eye, the shouts of killing connected together. This is interesting. After swallowing the food that was sent to his mouth, the majestic perception spread out, and he noticed that there were suddenly many rioting slaves in the usually quiet Mariewa. He frowned, and doubts inevitably rose in his heart. So that's how it is. Is it the date 16 years ago when Mariewa was invaded? With a strange smile at the corner of his mouth, Dustless wiped his hands, and a look of enlightenment flashed in his eyes. The only person who invaded Mariewa in the world was the master of the Murlocs, Fisher Tiger. He is quite bold to dare to invade Mariewa. His fingers gently tapped on the long mahogany table, making a rhythmic sound. Dustless directly took a nap, turning a deaf ear to the outside disturbance, and the thoughts in his mind began to turn. How can a clown have the ability to invade Mariewa, but a half-baked person with a bounty of more than 200 million berries? Even if he once knew Mariewa, it is impossible for him to have the ability to invade. When he opened his eyes again, Dustless was full of doubts. A criminal with a bounty of about 200 million berries. His strength is only about the level of an ordinary Marine Vice Admiral, and even worse than a Vice Admiral in Marine. There is something strange. There must be a conspiracy. There was a strange color in his eyes, and Dustless's heart was splashed with ripples. He remembered that Tiger's bounty was 230 million berries, which was the bounty after he successfully liberated the slaves. Now, he is just an unknown character who has not yet been offered a bounty. Even if he has the strength comparable to a Marine Vice Admiral, it is not justifiable for Mariewa to be invaded so simply. Bang, bang, bang. When Dustless was thinking about it, a rush of footsteps suddenly came from the dark corridor. Looking up, several big men in black suits hurried over. They could not wait to surround and protect Dustless. Louis South Saint, Mariewa has been invaded. We will escort you away now. The man in sunglasses, who is obviously the leader of this group of people, said with eagerness, and even Dustless did not speak and directly dragged him away. Where are you taking me? Have other Tenryubito also been taken? With an indifferent look, Dustless's voice was magnetic, not as grumpy as other Tenryubito, not knowing etiquette, and giving people the feeling that it was more like a casual conversation between friends. Several big men were stunned. The arrogance and unreasonableness of Tenryubito was known all over the world. The man in front of them was surprisingly calm and gave people a very amiable feeling. Yes, Louis South, Saint, many other Tenryubito were also secretly protected. The slaves who broke out of the prison slaughtered Tenryubito wantonly. The man in the suit with glasses said, these slaves were oppressed all year round, and their hatred for Tenryubito was self-evident. Once they were liberated, they would inevitably fight against Tenryubito. Is it? Hearing this, Wu Chen's face flashed with a cold light, and a glaring, killing intent swept out. A tyrannical, repulsive force broke out from his body, and the black-clothed men who clustered around Wu Chen were instantly sent flying. Their bones were broken, their internal organs were dislocated, their eyes were dim, they lost their luster, and they were dying. They looked at Dustless incredulously. It's funny, don't you think so? Sitting back again, Dustless looked at the half-dead people lying on the ground, and the corners of his mouth raised, showing a contemptuous smile. Mariewa is really the darkest place, and the strategy of killing with a borrowed knife is a set of tricks. Louis South Saint, what are you talking about? We don't understand what you mean. A group of big men with sunglasses looked at Dustless in confusion, and even the repulsion that Dustless exerted was out of the sky, and they looked at Dustless with puzzled doubts. Don't understand? That's natural. Sitting down leisurely, Wu Chen once again enjoyed his wine and delicacies. He ignored the existence of these people and said, if you guys knew the inside story, perhaps your heads would have been separated from your body. Of course, it is precisely because you will never understand the reason that you are destined to be a worm crawling at the bottom for the rest of your life. After that, Dustless did not wait for several people to react, and his whole body surged with repulsion, and all the matter centered on himself was annihilated and collapsed, turning into dust and disappearing. With Fisher Tiger's strength, even if he used to be a slave of Tenryubito and is familiar with the geographical structure of Mariewa, he has no ability to invade the Holy Land. He is still too far away. There must be a secret existence that no one knows. Chapter 390. At noonnight, the whole world was peaceful. Only the center of power in the world, Mariejois, was playing out another cruel scene at this moment. The released slaves raised their butcher's knife to the celestial dragons. After several years of oppression, they had already lost their minds. The only thing they wanted to do was to kill these celestial dragons who tortured them all day long to vent their hatred. This is interesting. Years of oppression have made you crazy enough to forget where this is. On the balcony, Dustless looked down at the chaotic field below and tasted the red liquid in the wine glass. The celestial dragons were obviously not as good as these slaves. Even if there were people in the government protecting these vermin, there were celestial dragons lying in a pool of blood. In the room where Dustless was, the smell of blood was overwhelming. Looking back, many broken limbs were clearly visible, and their pupils were frightened and dazed. It was obvious that they were cruelly dismembered on the spot without even reacting. It was not difficult to see from the shocked eyes that they did not believe that the celestial dragons in front of them, who were called the biggest garbage by human beings, had such terrifying strength that they could kill them with a wave of his hand. They did not even have time to react or defend. Vulgar. A bloody light flashed in his eyes. Wu Chun resolutely turned around and walked into the room. Human nature was fickle, and the world was fickle. He was not so bored to save those so-called people of the same race. Bang, bang, bang. The sound of hurried and messy footsteps came again. Dustless frowned, and the murderous aura flashed away. He suddenly raised his arm and went straight to the dark corridor in front of him. Chakras surged, and an unparalleled repulsive force came out of the palm of his hand. Boom! The murderous slave was suddenly torn apart, and his body burst like a water ball. Dustless's face gradually became cold. These slaves came one after another endlessly. In less than a quarter of an hour, he had killed dozens of them. Killing with a borrowed knife, it's a good plan. Looking far away and staring at the beautiful building outside the window, Dustless said with admiration, "The people who live there were the highest power in the world, the 5 Elder Stars. What is Marijoa? The home of Tenryubito, the residence of the Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, and the location of the Commander-in-Chief of the world government, including the headquarters of many intelligence departments such as CP0, CP9, are all in Mariejois, which can be said to be a gathering of strong people. It was outrageous that a mere fisher tiger had made such a mess of Mariejois. Killing with a borrowed knife? Don't tell me you suspect that the 5 honored stars did this on purpose." A light voice sounded in his mind. Naturally, it was Ling, the consciousness of the system, doubting Dustless's guess. "I'm not sure about this. Although I'm just guessing, in terms of ability, Tiger has no ability to invade Mariejois at all. Even if he has been a slave for a few years and knows Mariejois like the back of his hand, he does not have this ability." Shaking his head, Dustless said with some hesitation, "There are countless strong people in Mariejois, more than the strong people in Marine headquarters, and their strength is also better. Not to mention Fisher Tiger. Even if the Pirate King Roger and Whitebeard join forces to attack Mariejois, they may be besieged to death. After all, the Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, and the Commander-in-Chief of the army, as well as the strong people of CP0, CP9, are all here. To some extent, the incident of this raid is like a deliberate move, deliberately opening the road for Fisher Tiger to easily invade Mariejois. Mariejois is the center of the world's power, and its defense can be imagined. The probability of Tiger, who is only at the Vice Admiral level, invading is 0. Is it really okay for us to do this? It's tantamount to slapping our own face. Tomorrow, the news of Mariejois being invaded will spread all over the world, and it will be talked about again. In the brightly lit room, 5 figures with different expressions were clearly visible, and the one who spoke was a bald old man with a long sword in his hand and glasses. This person gives people an extremely awe-inspiring feeling. Even if it's just a look, there's an invincible sharpness. That's the only way. The plan has been implemented. Anyway, we have lost a lot of face over the years. If we can clear some garbage, It can be regarded as a benefit to all mankind, the old man with a little red skin and neat blonde hair said with a tone of indifference. It was worth it to kill some garbage to purify the air. This has nothing to do with us. The old man with long white hair and a long beard shook the coffee cup in his hand and said, Fishman Tiger was originally a slave of those guys. He escaped by chance a few years ago. Now it's reasonable for him to go back and retaliate against Tenryubito. Even if Tenryubito accuses us, he can't say anything to us. The crime of dereliction of duty is a fact. The group of people who let Tiger sneak in deliberately will be secretly removed, so that there will be no evidence, and by the way, the whole crime will be pushed to the Fishman Island. The old man with a sword who spoke first said with a murderous aura. His whole person was full of a cold death aura. The meaning revealed in his words was that he couldn't wait to tear Tenryubito into pieces. In fact, the relationship between Tenryubito and the 5 Elder Stars was not so harmonious. The 5 Elder Stars did not belong to Tenryubito, but they were subject to the supreme orders of Tenryubito. As the concentration of the highest power in the world, the 5 of them listened to the orders of a group of good-for-nothings, which was the biggest insult. Tenryubito relied on the identity of a descendant of the Creator to act recklessly, lawlessly, and buy and sell slaves in broad daylight. It could be said that they were the biggest source of turmoil in the world. However, for some special reason, they couldn't do anything to these garbage. They were really unwilling. Now that Tiger was willing to take the initiative to attack, they, the 5 Elder Stars, were naturally willing to help Tiger realize his beautiful wish. Since they couldn't do it openly, they could only stab a knife in the dark. Anyway, all the blame would be borne by Tiger and the fishmen he brought. Chapter 391. It is also human nature for the Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, to hate Tenryubito so much. When they preach the justice of the world, they still shelter the most vicious people, Tenryubito. This is tantamount to slapping their own face. This can't be helped. That group of people has a rich background and is not as simple as it seems. We can only use this method to vent our anger for the time being. Wearing a black suit, white curly hair, and a flat hat, the old man with a scar on the left side of his face said with a complicated melancholy in his tone. His dry face had a helpless smile, and it seemed that he was trying to find joy in the bitterness. Tenryubito is not as simple as it seems. It has been passed down for more than 800 years and has a rich heritage. For countless years, it is not that no one has tried to take advantage of them, but in the end, they all failed. For more than 800 years, Tenryubito is by no means as useless as the world thinks. Even the status of the 5 of them is not as good as the former. They're the biggest bugs, much more abominable than the ferocious pirates. They are unscrupulous in the cloak of justice, and they are lawless when they fight. The old man with the sword snorted, and the murderous look in his eyes was abnormal. If the pirates do evil, no one dares to say anything about the Tenryubito who claims to be God killing people and arson. There is no other reason, because Tenryubito has privileges. Mariehua's fire was monstrous. The smell of blood was lingering, and the black smoke was nearly 10 feet high, full of despair, giving people a suffocating feeling of purgatory on earth. Those Tenryubito who are secretly controlled by the world government, I am afraid that they will be quietly disposed of sad. Looking indifferently at the distant void, Wu-chan murmured to himself without any ripples. This was also the price of their tyrannical life. There was a cause, and there was an effect. There was no reason to let it go like this. The means of the Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, are extremely ruthless. They dare to plot against their master. In his mind, the system consciousness Langer side. Judging from various factors, Tiger does not have the strength to invade Mariehua. Mariehua has countless strong people, and Tiger is just a chestnut in the sea. The Gorosei are all-powerful and ambitious people, and they have the world government and many departments, such as a powerful organization like the Marine. They are willing to be the dogs of the celestial dragons. Shaking his head, Dustless concluded that people's ambition grows with the expansion of strength. No one wants to be inferior to others, whether it is accidental or inevitable. It shows that the Gorosei is ambitious and unwilling to be inferior to the celestial dragons. They have guts. How dare they steal from me? Dustless's words were suddenly stuck in his throat as he changed the topic. His cold eyes stared into the depths of the darkness as a cold smile appeared on his face. The powerful eye power in his eye sockets exploded, rapidly oppressing. Looking up, Dustless was covered in frost as he walked expressionlessly into the dark space. In the dark and silent space, a few blurry figures moved nimbly. These monsters were different from humans. They were ugly and unbearable to look at. Some of them even had more than a dozen arms. Little girl, I will unlock the shackles for you. From now on, you are free and no longer a slave of the celestial dragons. The burly red-skinned man revealed a kind smile. He looked at the chain that he had taken from the girl's head, and a trace of hatred flashed in his eyes. With a powerful shake, he directly shattered the chain into lime-like fragments. Looking closely, the girl who was rescued was the later famous Empress Boa Hancock. Boss Tiger, there seems to be something wrong here. Looking at the dark red blood stains under his feet, the blue-skinned monster frowned and said with a heavy tone of depression and puzzlement. The dark corridor in front of him smelled of blood, and the blood under his feet came from there. Jimby, it's really wrong. The people who died here seem to be slaves who were released before. After a long silence, Tiger said heavily. His heart sank. As everyone knew, celestial dragons were trash without the strength to truss up a chicken, and most of the slaves were powerhouses with strong physiques. Slaughtering celestial dragons was a piece of cake. Let's leave here first. I'm afraid the government sent strong people to do this. Only their minions have this strength. With a sigh, although he was unwilling, there were still a large number of slaves who had not been rescued. Tiger could only choose to leave. It was luck to be able to invade Mariewa. Mariewa is the nest of the world government. No matter how negligent the defense is, it can't be invaded, so Tiger can only plan himself as a lucky person. Go? I actually thought that you guys would be able to leave. An indifferent voice suddenly resounded in the empty hall. The abrupt voice was extremely soft and lazy, as if mocking Tiger and the others for overestimating themselves. In short, there was a kind of silent ridicule. Who is it? Get out of here. Don't pretend to be a ghost. After a while, seeing that no one had appeared, the shark-faced young man couldn't help but roar angrily. Arlong, shut up. Jinbi glared at Arlong with dissatisfaction, and the irritation on his face disappeared in a flash. He nervously observed the wind and grass around him. The enemy hidden in the dark was the most dangerous. Strange, that seems to be the voice of Lois South Sage. The future Empress was full of doubts. She tilted her head and shook her head after a moment of contemplation. The celestial dragons were all fat and incompetent idiots in the eyes of the world. The previous unfathomable voice could not be a celestial dragon. They did not have that ability. Boom! A gorgeous golden light fell from the sky, piercing the roof and forming a big hole. Countless photons gathered and drilled in, floating like fireflies. This strange scene made all the fishmen stunned, and they looked at each other. Suddenly, the light quickly gathered and condensed, and a vague figure formed. Chapter 392. Warm photons wandered in the dark space. The hall was full of light, and the bright luster turned the night into day. The Murlocs present looked at the figure floating in the air. Ability user, Tiger's face was gloomy. He clenched his fist and subconsciously covered his eyes with his hand. The burning flash was as dazzling as the sun, making him unable to open his eyes. Is this the Shining Man? Through the tiny gap between his fingers, Tiger widened his eyes and looked incredulously at the figure condensed in the air. The flashing light was like a miniature sun. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was the Shining Man. Under everyone's surprised gaze, the figure slowly formed. Celestial Dragon. Staring at the strange dress, the fishman along exclaimed, "This kind of special dress, only the celestial dragons in the world would wear it and swagger through the streets." So is also one of the symbols of celestial dragons. After a short time, the face of the visitor finally flashed. He stood casually in the sky. His deep eyes were as bright as stars, and his messy hair was dancing with the wind. His face was white. His facial features were angular, his body was thin, and his dry and cracked mouth was slightly raised, revealing a faint smile. Is this guy really a celestial dragon? Jinbi, who recovered from his shock, looked sluggish with some doubt. The celestial dragons all had pig waists and fat faces, especially the males. They were all like this. One must know that celestial dragons were synonymous with god-level ugly men. The celestial dragon in front of him was the complete opposite. It was fundamentally different from those useless garbage. A celestial dragon that could shine like the sun and even float strangely in the air was unheard of and unheard of. Lois Saint, Boa Hancock, who was nearly 15 or 16 years old, trembled. Her face was pale, and her quiet eyes were filled with fear. She said the true identity of Dustless. Sure enough, it was a celestial dragon. Tiger and others looked at each other, and their eyes were relaxed. The celestial dragon ate the devil fruit not to fight, but to have fun. It's a pity the devil fruit that can be eaten by the celestial dragon is certainly not an ordinary thing. Tiger's eyes flashed with a touch of sadness. If it was an unknown fruit, celestial dragons would generally let the slaves they bought eat it. The devil fruit in front of them could float in the air, and the golden light just now showed that it was not an ordinary thing. The good fruit is eaten by the pig. The young and vigorous fisherman Along took a step forward and hooked his thumb at Wu Chun. He said contemptuously, "Boy, since you've seen our true faces, you'll definitely die. Do you want to kill yourself, or let me help you dismember your body?" An arrogant voice, Arlong sneered. The reason why celestial dragons can be arrogant is because of the protection of the Marine Admiral. Without it, they are just the most incompetent waste. At least Arlong and Tiger, as well as other people, think so. Without the protection of the Marine, celestial dragons will become sheep waiting to be slaughtered. However, Dustless's eyes directly ignored the arrogant Arlong. His indifferent eyes fell on Boa Hancock's face. He pointed to her and said with a smile, "You are bold enough, although I don't care about a slave. But if I let you take her away like this, where will my face go? Why don't you leave one of you to save my face in exchange for her life?" The indifferent pupils were replaced by a playful color. Dustless's face was full of ridicule. He didn't feel anything special about the so-called Empress. Trash dares to talk big. Why don't you come down and die? Arlong's face was ferocious. Dustless's direct ignoring of him had aroused his anger. Now, this celestial dragon waste dared to speak arrogantly, which completely angered him. Countless blood vessels gushed out of his frightening eyes, and the strength of his whole body was operating to the limit. His pupils stared at Dustless, and his legs were slightly bent down to continue his strength. Worthy of being a fishman, this power is really not a cover. Dustless nodded slightly, and then also pointed at Arlong on the ground with his finger, full of provocation, contemptuous eyes looking at the trash not worth mentioning. "Tear you apart, Wiz." An angry roar fell, accompanied by a boom sound. The floor under Arlong's feet also shattered into foam, and his strong body rose from the ground and roared like a cannonball. The corner of his mouth opened, and a fishy smell came out, revealing sawtooth full of fangs, jumping with cold light. It was not difficult to see that he was going to completely tear Dustless to pieces. There's a road to heaven, but you don't take it. There's no door to hell, but you throw yourself into it. Lifting his right foot gently, Wu Chan shook his head hopelessly as he looked at Along, who was galloping towards him. His expression was cold and dull. The light on his leg gathered, and after a while, it turned into a dazzling pure gold. A lazy voice resounded in the dark hall. "Speed is weight. Have you ever been kicked at the speed of light? Ah. It seemed that I asked superfluous questions. It is an honor for clowns like you to enjoy the taste of light. As the voice fell, Dustless's golden leg also fell mercilessly. Boom, boom, boom. The figure that jumped into the air was cruelly suppressed. He was directly kicked down by Dustless and heavily smashed into the ground. The valiant force directly caused the entire floor to burst open, forming an incomparably huge deep pit. Arlong, who was burned all over, was lying in it without any breath. Arlong, seeing this, Tiger's eyes were about to crack, and his huge iron fist was clenched tightly. Fishmen valued easy things, and the passion in him valued the bond between them even more. Idiot. Instead of worrying about him, you should worry about your own situation. A ghostly voice resounded behind him. Tiger's pupils widened, and his whole body was cold. He suddenly looked back and saw Dustless with a strange smile on his face. Of course, there was also his shining finger. Chapter 393. The tiny golden luster is not beautiful. The luster is gentle. It looks harmless, not worth mentioning, and it gives people a feeling of no danger. However, Tiger, who was locked, felt a strong force that wanted to penetrate him. Under the shroud of death, Tiger was uncharacteristically calm and natural, and he made his strongest defense in an orderly manner. This young Tenryubido is obviously extremely experienced. His rough skin suddenly became abnormally shiny. Clang! The crisp sound of steel colliding sounded, and a faint spark was swept up, and then a figure was thrown out by brute force, and the luxurious villa was suddenly dismembered and turned into a pile of debris. A mere fish actually knows this trick. Raising his head, Wu Chen's gaze fell on Tiger, who was sent flying. He stared at him and said faintly, "How long are you going to pretend to be dead? This kind of ordinary laser shouldn't be able to kill you." Looking around, Tiger's whole body has become a black Iron Man. Armament Haki. Dustless's eyes flashed with understanding, staring at the dark steel skin. With a little heat and yearning, this is the native power of the world in front of him. Armament Haki can enhance a person's defense and attack power, acting like an invisible armor. It can also evolve into attack power and then compete with Devil Fruit ability users. It can be said that one skill is multi-purpose and involves a wide range of fields. It's amazing this guy actually knows Armament Haki. Who did he learn it from? Although it's only a half-baked, but it's good to see it in advance. Looking at the black luster all over his body with interest, Dustless frowned and wondered. Tiger, who has a bounty of only 230 million berries, should not know Armament Haki. Someone must have trained him. His face was cold, and Wu Chun murmured to himself in relief. Otherwise, it would be difficult for him to learn Armament Haki without a few years or even more than 10 years. It seems to be a laser. Standing up with difficulty, the tingling spread all over his body, and his whole body seemed to fall apart. Looking at his smoking arm, Tiger's voice was heavy and a little hoarse. Even with the Armament Haki defense, his arm was penetrated by the hot light. In front of the terrifying laser, his Haki seemed to not exist. He's abnormally strong, and he's a celestial dragon. Uncontrollably coughing up blood, Tiger sucked in a breath of cold air. His face was gloomy, and the way he looked at Dustless had changed. It was like the madness of a dying beast. He can actually shoot out lasers. His ability seems to be related to light. Secretly guessing Dustless's ability, Tiger's entire body turned into black steel, shining brightly, giving off the feeling that his entire body was dyed with ink. Boring, this level of Armament Haki doesn't work. Not even the most basic defense. Wu Chun shook his head as he stared at Tiger's solemn face. He opened his mouth and spoke in a relaxed manner. A dazzling flash swept across his body and exploded like raindrops. Soon after, he turned into countless particles, and all of them flew towards where Tiger was standing. At the same time, personnel wearing Navy uniforms came from all directions, quickly suppressing the defected slaves, and the sky was filled with chaotic shouts. Compared to the well-trained Marines, these tortured slaves were strong, but they still became the targets of torture. "Jinbi, take this little girl and the other fishmen and retreat. Don't worry about me." Aware of the shouts of the outside world, Tiger roared at the stunned Jinbi. These people are still too young after all. They are still young. They have not seen the real world. Tiger, the strongest in their eyes, was beaten violently, and it is reasonable that they did not recover for a while. For them, who are wandering at the bottom, Dustless's current strength is far beyond their imagination. I told you before not to ignore my existence. You seem to have made such a low-level mistake. Thousands of golden flashes converged in front of Tiger, and Dustless's body quickly condensed. As soon as he raised his head, a black iron fist greeted him. Dustless just smiled and raised his hand casually. Boom! Tiger stared at Dustless. His dark face was full of ferocious, and the bulging blue veins were clearly visible. He tried to break through Dustless's defense with all his strength, but he could not shake it. From beginning to end, Dustless's face remained calm. Looking up, he saw a fair and tender hand easily blocking the black iron fist. "Get out of here, I will hold this guy." From the corner of his eyes, Tiger saw that Jinbi, Arlong, and Octopus Jr. were still sluggish. Tiger couldn't help but roar loudly. His irritable voice resounded through the sky. With a strong fluctuation of power, it pulled the thoughts of several people back. "Boss Tiger." Jinbi clenched his fist tightly, and his eyes were bloodshot, full of murderous intent, staring at Dustless. He did not retreat, and his momentum was running to the extreme. It seemed that he was going to make a final struggle. "Shut up. I'll entrust the future of the merman race to you. Live on with my hopes." His voice suddenly softened, and Tiger, who was in the state of armament hockey, said calmly. Obviously, he had planned to sacrifice himself in exchange for a few people's lives. "Entrust? Don't bother. Isn't it good to send you to heaven together?" Hearing this, Dustless's mouth curled into a sneer. At the same time, a cold, murderous aura broke out of his body. The murderous aura shrouded Boa Hancock, Jinbi, Arlong, and others. All the air around them was sucked away, and the shadow of death was approaching, and several people's eyes were full of despair. Glancing at several people, Dustless's fingertips flashed, and he was about to send them to heaven together. A strong fluctuation of power burst out. Like an ancient, awakened, giant dragon roaring madly, that energy wave that he had never felt before. Even if Wuchen's state of mind was shocked, his expression also changed slightly. Chapter 394. In the face of the oppression and fear of death, people in desperate situations will always break out their potential. The light gathered at Dustless's fingertips is the front road to the end for them, which is a kind of oppression. No one wants to die, so if they want to live, they can only break out with stronger strength. The strong fluctuation spread, and the invisible waves covered the boundless area, even covering the sky of Mariewa, and the slaves who fled around and the Marines who caught them were directly stunned. Is this the Haushiku Haki, savoring the remaining momentum suppression in the air? Dustless looked at the young figure in amazement, and a feeling of speechlessness arose in his heart. The person who awakened Haushika Haki is the future Empress, Boa Hancock. Under the oppression of Dustless's killing intent, Haushika Haki in Boa Hancock's body awakened. A slave can awaken Haushika Haki. Is this what it means to be in the opposite direction? The corners of his mouth twitched without a trace, and Dustless's heart was full of entanglement and strangeness. He looked at Boa Hancock like a monster. After a while, Dustless didn't see anything special about her. Even though Boa Hancock has eaten sweet fruit and now awakened Haushika Haki, Dustless doesn't feel that she has the qualifications to become a king, and there is no difference from before. Even if she awakens Haushika Haki, her eyes looking at Dustless are filled with fear. Whiz! Noticing that Dustless's eyes were focused on Boa Hancock, Tiger quickly retreated. Although he was surprised that this beautiful girl could awaken Haoshiku, he was still on guard against Dustless with goosebumps. Fishman empty-handed, profound meaning, Takeshi Ryoken. Seizing this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, Tiger waved his hand and used the most powerful skill in his life, condensing a water ball in his palm, and the endless impact broke out. The destructive chi waves were so powerful that they could topple mountains and overturn seas. Is this the last song? Wu-chan raised his eyes and looked at the air waves that were whizzing towards him. Wu-chan didn't dodge. He raised his small white hand slightly, and a ripple splashed out in the void. Countless photons gathered crazily from all directions. A golden long sword suddenly condensed in his hand. Even a last attack is so fragile. After saying that, Wu-chan raised the lightsaber in his hand high. The tip of the lightsaber condensed a dazzling white brilliance. He casually glanced at the oncoming violent impact and slashed out the lightsaber. Whiz! A dazzling golden light flickered and pierced through the night sky. The two forces were inevitably mixed together, but the golden slash had a greater advantage. It directly pierced through the oncoming shockwave and tore it apart. It went straight towards Tiger, who was in armament hockey state. Pucci. Tiger's dark body was penetrated by the sharp chop. His skin was torn and his flesh was blurred, and a scarlet blood stain was sprinkled in midair. Even though Tiger practiced armament hockey, he was still cut open by the sharp chop. Of course, this is also related to Tiger's hockey cultivation. If it were other strong people, Dustless would not be able to defeat them so easily. With such a serious injury, Tiger groaned and fainted in despair and unwillingness, lying on the ground, unable to move. Want to run? How can it be so easy? Looking straight at the distant sky, Dustless sneered again and again. Even if Jinbe and Boa Hancock and others fled without a trace, they still couldn't hide under his majestic perception. Photons condensed on his calf and shone again with a dazzling brilliance, and the dark night sky shone brightly, as if it was daytime. As for Tiger, he had been ignored. Whiz! After locking the direction of several people, Dustless blasted out with his foot, and a straight light swept straight into the distance, and the straight light cut through the dark night sky. This is interesting. This invasion of Mariehua is really not that simple. After a while, the expected explosion did not sound. Dustless frowned, and some differences flashed in his eyes, and the majestic perception spread again. He thought that he was using some strange means to avoid the attack, but he was stunned to find that an unknown mysterious enemy suddenly appeared and took Dustless's attack instead of Jinbe and the others. This is Mariehua, not your backyard. With a cold look, Dustless's killing intent was overflowing, and a bright golden light swept out of his body. When he was about to flash and chase after the enemy, his feet were suddenly bound by a strong and powerful rough hand. Looking at it, it was the Fishman Tiger. The Fishman's vitality is unimaginably strong, and he doesn't die. Why do you want to die? Or do you think I can't kill you? The light converged, and Dustless stared at Tiger, who was crawling on the ground, and asked aloud. His plan to chase was also stopped, and the Kusanagi sword in his hand was held high, shining with a dazzling cold light. He will not stop until he kills this Fishman. Hearing this, Tiger just smiled with relief. The pursuit in my heart, you cold, bloodthirsty, superior Tenryubido, can't understand it, and you will never understand it. Calmly and naturally looking at the sharp heaven cluster cloud sword, Tiger's dry and pale face carried a smile, giving people the feeling that he was like a spring breeze, like the warm sunshine of the third month of spring that refreshed people's hearts. Sorry, I don't intend to understand your unrealistic ideas. With frost hanging on his eyebrows, Dustless said indifferently, I'm different from other Tenryubito, but I am also the same as them, and my bloodthirsty nature is purer than theirs. Whiz. After that, the Kusanagi sword went down, and the sharp sword light swept towards Tiger's head. The sword cut the edge, and under the shroud of this light, all living things were forbidden. Tiger also closed his eyes and waited quietly for the arrival of death. At this critical moment, a black shadow rushed over from the black night sky. It was extremely ferocious as it grabbed at the heavenly sword of gathering clouds. Obviously, the Comer was an enemy, not a friend. Chapter 395. The unknown black shadow was extremely fast, and it was difficult for normal human eyes to catch it. In the blink of an eye, it was close to Dustless's side. Clang! The buzzing sound spread in the dark night sky, and the falling golden light sword was also stopped. With the light of the Kusanagi sword, a burly man with purple hair and a strong body could be seen. His muscles were extremely stylish, his aura was vigorous, his 2 or 3 meters tall figure was very oppressive. He was wearing a purple suit, his attitude was strict, and his eyes were awe-inspiring. Looking around, it was his dark big hand that grabbed Dustless's Kusanagi sword. Marine Headquarters Admiral. No, it should be said that it was the former Marine Admiral Black Wrist Z. The Kusanagi sword turned into countless particles and dissipated. Wu Chan raised his head and stared at the purple man and asked with a blank expression, "You Marines are going to intervene in the matter of celestial dragons? You're really wide." The void splashed with faint ripples, and a plain voice resounded. Or, "You Marines have been presumptuous to the point that you can ignore celestial dragons. Hundreds of years have passed, maybe Gorosei, 5 elder stars, and your Marines have forgotten who the master of this world is." Hearing this, Z's expression was stiff. Looking at Tiger, who had been cut open, his eyes flashed with unbearable color, and he persuaded, "He is already a dead man. There is no need to kill him." Seeing Dustless's Kusanagi sword dissipated into photons, Z frowned, and when he was about to speak, he suddenly remembered the supreme identity of celestial dragons, and the words that were on the tip of his tongue were taken back. The black iron fist also returned to the appearance of a normal human. Kill him? Worthy of the title of Unkillable Admiral, Black Wrist, Z, you are really different. You are so kind to the enemy. The corners of his mouth raised slightly, revealing a mocking smile. Dustless contemptuously said, "It's no wonder that it's like this. It's because there are rotten and ignorant people like you in the Marine that the so-called justice will be repelled by evil again and again. Even now, some people dare to invade places like Mariewa." Facing Z's cold gaze, Dustless coldly said, "It is worth mentioning that the current Marine is not even comparable to the later era. In this period, the 7 warlords of the sea has not yet been promised by the government. Compared with the powerful pirates, there is still a gap between the Marine and the pirates. However, because the world of One Piece is in a state of disunity, there is no threat to the Marine, and there are only a few of them. Overall, they still maintain the advantage, but if these scattered pirates gather together, they can easily destroy the Marine headquarters, excluding the world government. All in all, the Navy wasn't having a good time." Louis South Saint, please respect the Marine. Maybe I'm very pedantic and ignorant, but the Marine's philosophy has never wavered. From beginning to end, justice has always been implemented. Seeing Dustless talk about the Marine with a face full of ridicule and disdain, Z's face couldn't help but become gloomy. He clenched his fists. Although the Marine is really rotten and has a lot of problems, but the banner of justice has never been shaken. The Marine has always been the front line to fight against the pirates. There is no need to explain. This is an undeniable fact. The essence of your Marine, including the world government, is to serve the Tenryubito. Now you seem to have forgotten your duty." Looking at Z, Dustless indifferently said, "Tenryubito is the object of your Marine service. Every word and action is the command of God. As a Marine, you must unconditionally implement it. But now you dare to contradict me. This is the biggest blasphemy to God." At this point, Wu Chen's voice stopped. His eyes emitted a cold light, and his body disappeared. So fast, seeing Dustless suddenly disappear, Z's hair stood up, and his observation hockey spread out, searching for Dustless's trace. His whole body was suddenly covered with Busashoka hockey to strengthen his own defense. It's just a group of lazy people who live in the glory of their ancestors. How can their strength be so amazing? Z's face was ugly. After searching for a long time, he didn't find any trace of Dustless. This is the home of Tenryubito. The possibility of Dustless running away is zero. Up there, suddenly, a strange and extremely tyrannical energy fluctuation entered the range of perception. Z raised his head, but the dazzling light made him unable to open his eyes. Fortunately, he has observation hockey. Even if he closes his eyes, he can clearly feel the wind and grass outside. What kind of monster is this? Z's face slightly changed as he muttered to himself in bewilderment. He saw that Wu Chen's arm was wrapped with golden energy, which formed into a huge fist. The might of this fist was infinite. It gave people a feeling of extreme evil, as if he had just crawled out from hell. If he was hit by this fist, then he would be seriously injured if not dead. The power condensed, and the ugly black fist shined brighter. Soru, with a whoosh sound, the figure standing on the ground disappeared in a flash, and when it reappeared, it was already deep in the dark night sky. With all the strength of his body, he blasted towards the huge golden fist. Boom! Powerful energy waves spread out in all directions, and the void trembled violently. Ripples spread out one after another. Looking up, a crack appeared on the golden energy fist. Z also landed again. His posture was quite elegant, and the pit on the ground was clearly visible. What kind of freak is this guy? Taking a deep breath, Z tried his best to conceal the calmness in his tone. He tried to calm himself down. However, the arm that he used to fight with Wu Chan was shaking uncontrollably. It was not willing to cooperate with... Looking at Dustless's eyes also changed. Chapter 396. Floating in the sky. Wu Chen's expression was abnormal. He lifted his golden arm, and some slight cracks came into view. It was enough to prove how extraordinary and ferocious Z's punch was. Worthy of being called Black Wrist Z, he can actually make a partial Susanoo crack. His reputation is not in vain. The name Black Wrist is really not fabricated. Z is good at using armament hockey, so the world gave him the name Black Wrist Z. Being able to have such an extraordinary title also shows Z's attainments in armament hockey. If he only has a little knowledge of armament hockey, then it would be impossible for him to have the title Black Wrist. What the hell? It's just a group of parasites that rely on the protection of the government. How can it be? Z is far more surprised than Dustless. He has seen celestial dragons before. For this group of the most evil parasites, not only him, but the entire marine, even the Gorosei, and the entire human race have no good impression of them. This guy's strength is so extraordinary. It shows that celestial dragons are not all idiots. There must be other species like him. Z secretly thought. He originally thought that the celestial dragons were just ordinary-looking idiots, but now it seems that this was not the case. Thinking about it, with the temperament and ambition of the 5 elder stars, if the celestial dragons were trash without the strength to truss a chicken, then perhaps they would have been eradicated countless years ago. In this world where the strong are respected, it is impossible to live leisurely for hundreds of years just relying on the glory of the ancestors. While he was thinking, a dazzling brilliance came from the front. Z was slightly stunned. He raised his head, and an indifferent face appeared in front of him. The evil power in his hand was clearly visible. What kind of ability fruit is this? Paramecia or Logia? It doesn't seem to be. Compared to the previous punch, the current attack was more large-scale. It was a completely hill-like giant arm with infinite power. It mercilessly blasted towards Z. Armament hockey hardening. On the original basis, the dark skin shines and is many times stronger than steel. In such an embarrassing situation, Z can't avoid Dustless's attack. He can only rely on armament hockey to defend against Dustless's attack. This is also the biggest advantage of armament hockey. Both attack and defense are perfect. Boom, boom, boom. He spat out a mouthful of blood in the air, followed by a hazy figure flying out and crashing into the wall. A long and narrow gully was formed on the ground. I have to teach the Marines and the 5 Elder Star the lesson. You seem to have forgotten who the master of the world government is. Seeing this, Wu Chun just sneered again and again. Seeing Z fall into the pit, his majestic momentum continued to rise. He didn't intend to stop. Although he didn't want to kill Z, he wanted to teach him a lesson. He wanted to know who was bigger between the world government and the celestial dragons. As for Boa Hancock and the others who had already escaped, Dustless didn't care. With light speed, it was useless for them to escape. The breath of the whole body is more and more stable, and the momentum is also domineering. Dustless has not awakened Haushika Haki. This kind of Haushiku is innate and can't be cultivated. That being said, the murderous aura condensed on his body was far more powerful and oppressive than the Haushiku. The aura was getting thicker and thicker, and it was extremely oppressive. At the same time, under the Black Knight, several black figures came straight from all around. They were very fast and very experienced. They were all top powerhouses who had been through hundreds of battles. Behind them were white cloaks printed with the word justice. Royce South, Saint, the invasion of Mariewa has nothing to do with the Marine. If you are angry, you seem to have found the wrong target. The people guarding here are government personnel and intelligence agencies, such as CP0. A voice came over, and the tone was filled with endless indifference. He didn't put the celestial dragons in his eyes at all. In the dark earth, several silhouettes could be vaguely seen. They were tall monsters with a body of 2 or 3 meters. Everyone's aura was powerful. Hearing this, Dustless frowned. The safety of Mariewa was indeed not related to the Marine headquarters. This was the safety of Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, and CP0, CP9. Marine Fleet Admiral Sky, Admiral Sengoku, Hero Garp. Looking over, Dustless's face was inevitably filled with surprise. Behind the 3 people, he could clearly see the 3 future admirals. However, they were only lieutenant generals now. At the same time, Black Wrist Z stood up again. His head was bruised and bleeding, and his whole body was dripping with blood. However, his complexion didn't change from beginning to end. They were all superficial wounds. Dustless had controlled the degree of attack very well. It didn't reach the extent of injuring his muscles and bones. This is lively. The Marines' general mobilization. Seeing this scene, Dustless asked casually, but his heart was full of doubts. The Marines' task was extremely busy and tiring. Now the whole high-level secret appeared. Mariewa obviously has a big problem. This has nothing to do with you. The rough old face stared at Dustless, and Fleet Admiral simply refused Dustless's question. His eyes looked at Dustless vaguely, and at the same time, he looked at the bleeding head of Z, and his brows were tightly frozen. This Tenryubito is a bit evil. The same is true of several high-level Marines behind him. They look unnatural. If Dustless is a CP0 powerhouse, they can accept it, but wearing the uniform that Tenryu dares to wear, it makes people daydream. It is not difficult to see that Tenryubito, who is called garbage, is not as simple as it seems. 800 years ago, they were able to unify the world, and it was not just by talking. It's really a serious and unreasonable Fleet Admiral. Hearing this, Dustless just smiled. It is inevitable that people will gossip about him, and Tenryubito in the eyes of the world is the existence of eating, drinking, and pleasure, and they never intervene in the tasks of the world government and Marine. However, one thing is certain, the entire high-level Marine can suddenly visit Mariewa at night, obviously ordered by Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, or there's an uncontrollable incident. Chapter 397. 3 days later, the sun was shining. There were no clouds in the sky. The warm sun poured down from the ninth heaven. It was full of vitality, and Mariewa, in the midst of the smoke, was like a fairyland on earth. Of course, If one ignored the ugliness inside, it was indeed a paradise. Otherwise, it would be hell on earth for monsters in human skin. Louis Sal Saint, your afternoon tea. On the balcony, Dustless was lying leisurely on a couch, bathing in the sun, and beside him was a girl dressed in a black maid costume. Opening his eyes, he lazily took the afternoon tea. Dustless smiled and drank it, then closed his eyes again and handed the delicate teacup in his hand to the beautiful little maid. Looking closely, it was the future Empress Boa Hancock. Monitor the movements of Gorosei, and Marine's high-level officials. Once Admiral Kong leaves Mariehua, tell me immediately. Closing his eyes again, Dustless waved his hand to signal Hancock to leave, and then enjoyed the afternoon sun bath alone. He looked leisurely, and his gentle little face was full of tranquility, which was the opposite of those celestial dragons who were easily irritable. There is an essential gap. Yes, Lord Louis Sal Saint. Hancock nodded and turned away obediently. Her eyes flashed, and she disappeared in the sun with elegant steps. Now she is Dustless's personal maid and an intelligence officer responsible for monitoring Gorosei, and Marine. She thought that after Dustless caught her, it must be inhumane torture and humiliation, because celestial dragons are so violent and ferocious, and slaves are their punching bags. However, to Hancock's surprise, Dustless did not torture her, but treated her with courtesy, taught her a lot of physical skills, and did not put a collar on her again. She became a servant-like existence. That guy, clenching her fists, Hancock rolled her eyes, still with a little fear. She thought that Dustless was a different kind of existence and would let her go safely, but he was beaten to hell by a sentence a day ago. You are my unique slave. You will not get any redemption. Don't try to escape. No one will save you. If you run away, I will order the Marine headquarters to destroy your hometown. Anyway, the pirates there are rampant. Launching the demon slaughtering order is also a form of justice for the heavens. Her mind was in a trance as she recalled what Dustless had said to her a day ago. Her heart was filled with despair. What a complicated situation. After an unknown amount of time, Dustless suddenly opened his eyes, which were pulsing with an inexplicable luster, and let out an inexplicable sigh. Although he didn't understand the reason why the Marines' high-level personnel were dispatched, he could guess a lot of general content. Today's world is full of heroes, and countless big pirates are rising like comets. In the second half of the Grand Line, there's almost no place for Marines to settle down. It is occupied by those ferocious pirates, and they even simply occupy it as a camp. The seven warlords of the sea has not been born yet. Compared with the powerful pirates, the Marine is obviously inadequate. Red Hair Shanks, 100 Beast Kaido, Big as Mom, and Edward Newgate, the world's strongest man, who is also known as White Beard, each took a side. These pirates are the strongest people standing on top of the pyramid, and there are countless other pirates who are also rampant in the world. At first, the Marines' advantage was still great. The reason why they are at such a disadvantage is that the words of the Pirate King Roger before his death opened the so-called Great Age of Pirates. All the pirates rushed to the sea, and the Marines' advantage was suppressed. In the brightly lit room, the smoke was extremely suffocating. Z, is that celestial dragon kid so strong? Fleet Admiral looked at Z, who was wrapped in bandages, and frowned. The defense of armament hockey is well known, especially Z, who is a master of armament hockey. He has reached the point of perfection, but he was injured like this. As you can see, Fleet Admiral. Hearing this, Z just smiled bitterly. His eyes flashed with sadness and self-deprecation. He looked at the future 3 admirals and said, "The new generation replaces the old generation. We are all over 50 years old and have reached the age of retirement. The future world belongs to the young people." With a melancholy sigh, Z said helplessly, "That kid should be an ability user, similar to Kizaru's glinting fruit, but he can also fly and use strange tricks. In short, he is very strong." Recalling the short battle between himself and Dustless, Z said seriously. Although he didn't use his full strength, it can be seen that Dustless absolutely didn't use his full strength. How can Celestial Dragon have such a strong person? It's very rare. I really want to let that kid taste my fist. Hearing this, Garp's eyes flashed with green light. He couldn't wait to fight with Dustless immediately. Shut up, Garp. Fleet Admiral's mouth twitched fiercely. It's not a joke to beat a Celestial Dragon. Garp's expulsion is just the softest solution. Celestial Dragon has existed for hundreds of years. They have rich heritage. They must have secret weapons and other things that we don't know about. The great General Buddha Warring States, who has the title of Wise General, said, "The Celestial Dragons seem to be in a state of disunity, a group of lazy wastes. But in fact, there are also strange and special existences that do not play cards according to common sense. Since they were able to rule the world, they must have cards that we don't know about." With a wise light in his eyes, Fleet Admiral Buddha Sengoku said rationally, "Being able to ride on the head of the whole world for more than 800 years has explained everything." Celestial Dragon has masters and cards, such as the current Dustless. Changing the topic, Celestial Dragon, let Gorosei have a headache. Fleet Admiral shook his head and resolutely interrupted this boring topic. It's best not to get involved in this kind of thing. Whether it's Celestial Dragon or Gorosei, they're not good people. Chapter 398. The atmosphere in the office is oppressive, and the dull atmosphere makes it difficult to breathe. The faces of the high-level Marines present are faintly sad. Even the usually lazy Borsellino, Kizaru, is full of sadness. Boom! Ka-ka-ka! With a loud bang, the solid desk split into 4 or 5 pieces. Looking up, the initiator is the gloomy Fleet Admiral Kong. Damn, one piece Roger. He left such a big mess even after he died. After an angry roar, Fleet Admiral Kong can only hide his unhappiness in his heart. It's not worthwhile to see a person who has been dead for a few years. In the previous era, pirates and Marines had wins and losses with each other, but since Roger's death and a few words started the so-called Age of Pirates, pirates all over the world have increased greatly, and Marines' advantage is getting weaker and weaker. It's no wonder that Fleet Admiral Kong is so angry. In the end, it's all Roger's fault. Whitebeard, Akagami, and Bigama, including Kaido, these pirates have occupied many islands in the New World, and the islands that symbolize marine flags have become various kinds of skeleton flags. It seems that to ease the tense and depressed atmosphere, the old Vice Admiral Tsuru humorously said, the effect was negligible. All the high-level Marines were exhausted. Since Roger was executed, the number of pirates around the world has skyrocketed. Greed is one of the human nature. Maybe it was a mistake to publicly execute him. Admiral Sengoku's eyes were shining. Roger's words before his death were the nature of human beings, and no one could remain calm when the financial reports piled up like a mountain. It's good to publicly execute Roger and use his death to improve Marines' morale. Roger also used Marine to start the Age of Pirates. Overall, it's a trap for Marine. It doesn't matter. At present, Akagami, Red Hair, Kaido, Bigama, and Whitebeard are sweeping the New World. They are like emperors looking down on the pirates of the New World. If the Marine doesn't make a move, I'm afraid that there will be no place for us to intervene in the New World. Some of the captured countries in the New World are the countries of the world government. As the existence of the highest power, Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, naturally can't tolerate pirates' wanton behavior. Therefore, the top Marine officials were called to Mariewa, hoping that they could come up with a reasonable solution to the problem. There are many contradictions between pirates. In fact, we can take advantage of it and cause them to kill each other. Hearing this, all the Marines' eyes lit up. Admiral Kong and Garp were the same. The Crane was the Marines' great staff officer. Her thinking ability was excellent. She often did things without any loopholes. Her plans rarely had any loopholes. Unlike the Navy, pirates are like a plate of loose sand. There are countless incidents where they fight for gold and silver treasures. In the blink of an eye, 2 days had already passed. His identity has become the supreme celestial dragon. Dustless's tight lifestyle has also become leisurely. Although it is somewhat boring, it is leisurely, and he also experienced the ugly activities belonging to the celestial dragon. As soon as he returned to his villa, Boa Hancock, dressed in a black maid outfit, came uninvited. Luo Ec Nan, Saint, there's a special guest in your room. Staring at the casually dressed Dustless, Hancock's eyes were filled with surprise, but she still respectfully said, "Celestial dragons regard themselves as superior, and all creatures are no different from ants and slaves in their eyes. Celestial dragons who dress like Dustless and are no different from ordinary humans are rare." Special guest. Hearing this, Dustless was stunned and asked suspiciously, "The people in this world are all strangers. The only person he barely knows is the Marine who confronted him a few days ago. Is it possible that—" Wu Chen's expression froze. His face was extremely unnatural. Suddenly, he remembered the attributes of this deceptive identity. His heart was filled with a bitter feeling of wanting to cry, but having no tears. "She claims to be your fiancée." Staring at Dustless, whose face changed greatly, Hancock said seriously, "Dustless's fiancée, who he has never met, is also a celestial dragon and has come to Dustless's residence." "Sure enough, it's that deceptive fiancé. What did I do?" Twitching his mouth, Dustless wanted to cry, but had no tears. At the same time, he secretly cursed the old bastard in his heart and couldn't help but fantasize about the old sow. The male celestial dragon is synonymous with the ugly man, and the female celestial dragon is naturally synonymous with the ugly woman. I hope she can leave sensibly. Otherwise, don't blame me for being ruthless. With a cold luster in his eyes, Dustless walked straight into the depths of the villa. If the other party is sensible and can leave obediently, Dustless naturally will not say much. If she is shameless, he can only destroy the flower. Even if it is the so-called celestial dragon, he will not spare her. Marrying a fat pig as a wife is more serious than losing 10 years of life. In Dustless's bedroom, a petite figure came into view with shoulder-length golden hair. Because of several gauze curtains, the specific appearance could not be seen clearly. Wearing the unique costume of the celestial dragon, and without a round air cover. After observing Dustless's bedroom for a while, the eyes of the mysterious blonde person flashed a strange color, and the corner of his mouth evoked a strange smile. The feeling that it gave people was particularly strange. No wonder it is said to be a different kind of celestial dragon. Staring at the neatly placed books on the table, the mysterious person showed holy blue eyes and held a golden sword full of mysterious runes in his hand. Even if it has not been drawn, the whole room is full of cold sword light. Chapter 399. Dustless's room was very different from other celestial dragons. It was simple and elegant, with all kinds of books, and even had an indescribable natural flavor. These books were obviously not deliberately pretentious. There was still fresh handwriting on them, and the ink stains were not dry. Obviously, Dustless had read them carefully. Other celestial dragons' rooms were all kinds of luxurious gems, and there was a smell of obscenity. In fact, Dustless's room used to be inlaid with all kinds of gorgeous decorations, shining extremely, but Dustless had ordered them to be removed. He is interested in boring history. The blonde celestial dragon frowned slightly, and her gem-like eyes flashed with a strange color. She curiously picked up the books that Dustless had compared and read carefully in her spotless eyes. She looked peaceful and quiet. After about a while, the corners of her mouth raised slightly, revealing a smile full of deep meaning, and whispered, "He is not interested in history, but in the history of celestial dragons and everything 800 years ago." The dense handwriting filled the books, and the content recorded was all about celestial dragons and the 800 years of blank history. This is an unexpected effort, but this handwriting is really difficult to look at. Her delicate nose wrinkled as she spoke with a slightly dissatisfied expression. Perhaps because she was too absorbed, the blonde girl did not realize the arrival of Dustless. "Who allowed you to enter my room?" Dark and cold, staring at the back of the front, Dustless's eyes flashed a cold light, and he snapped, and the strong and oppressive murderous aura filled the whole room. Sneaking into his bedroom without being pressed and saying that the level of education was not good and the handwriting was garbage. How could this be? The blonde figure turned around, revealing his white skin. He pointed to the books and said softly, "You have a lot of courage. If these contents are leaked out, your identity as a celestial dragon will not be good. First of all, let me introduce myself, Yali Klaya." The celestial dragon in front of him was obviously well educated, and she bloomed a smile. Her smile was beautiful, and her face was flawless like a porcelain doll, which subverted Dustless's understanding of celestial dragons. There was an absurd feeling of an old sow turning into a fairy. "Who allowed you to come in?" After all, she was not an ordinary person. After a moment of absent-mindedness, Dustless recovered his indifference. Looking at the sacred blue eyes, he asked Klaya unhappily, "The field involved in these contents, with your current identity, you can't touch. It's better not to explore it." Because of her height was higher than Dustless, she looked down at Dustless, ignoring the previous remarks. Klaya solemnly warned him, even if her voice was extremely soft, with a sense of superiority. The identity of the celestial dragons is also divided into high and low. If they were all the same as the group of idiots in the outside world, they would have been swallowed a long time ago. At this point, the golden-haired girl revealed an arrogant expression. The meaning of her words was obvious. "Your identity, eyes, eyes, and of the eyes of the extremely dangerous. Of the eyes of light, of the extreme, of the extreme. Of the eyes, the eyes, that is." Looking at Dustless's eyes, Klaya admitted frankly, "Sure enough, even if the woman in front of me who calls herself Klaya has a good education, the idea of superiority is deeply ingrained in her bones, and the inviolable character of supremacy has not changed." Seeing this, Dustless shook his head in disappointment, and then his whole body flashed with a bright golden light. Like a ghost, he appeared behind her. Staring at her who was unaware, the corner of his mouth flashed a cold smile. "If that's the case, then you can go to hell and be superior to others." His right arm flashed with a black flame. Dustless's face was cold, and he stabbed straight at her back. The black netherworld ghost fire was enough to burn everything in the world. It was no doubt Amaterasu. It directly penetrated her body. However, the strange thing was that the person in front of him stood there quietly, as if she did not exist, and it could not burn her at all. "Stop! You can't burn me." Turning her head, looking down at Dustless, who was shorter than her, Klaya smiled sweetly, with a proud expression, and said, "I think you can't even comprehend my ability." "Ability that I can't comprehend? A mere little girl dares to say that." Hearing this, the corner of Dustless's mouth suddenly rose, and his pupils rapidly changed, revealing a scarlet five-pointed star eye. The light emitted was incomparably dangerous, and he revealed a strange, evil smile. "Although I don't know what your ability is, but gravity, everything in the world is controlled by gravity. No matter what ability you have, don't even think about escaping from gravity." Shameless boasting. Klaya sneered again and again, and was about to ridicule Dustless, when an indifferent voice sounded first. "Kamui." Klaya was stunned, her soul trembling under Dustless's scarlet eyes. Just as she was about to activate her ability to leave, a majestic suction force came from behind her, locking her body. "Scoundrel, isn't your ability similar to Kizaru's light?" Klaya's expression changed greatly when she felt the suction force. Her expression changed greatly, and she was overwhelmed with shock. She turned her head to look at the shattered space behind her, and the fear in her sacred blue eyes was obvious. Gravity, everything in the world is controlled by gravity. This phrase was not just for show. "Light? How ignorant are you?" That's just one of my countless abilities, Dustless said with contempt, as if he had heard the most ridiculous joke in the world. Damn it! Her body overflowed with strange fluctuations, and the space around her began to distort slightly. Clea tried to escape from the suction force, but she helplessly discovered that this boundless suction force was tightly locked onto her, and she could not escape at all. Go to hell! Ripples appeared in his indifferent eyes, and his eye power began to go berserk. The exaggerated black hole behind Clea once again enlarged, and the suction force became even more majestic, instantly swallowing her, and was about to obliterate her. Damn bastard! I am your fiancé. Are you going to kill your wife? Seeing that brute force was unable to escape from the small black hole, Clea used her trump card and impatiently begged Dustless. She looked like she was about to cry, and people couldn't help but feel pity for her. Even if she was so humble, what she got in return was Dustless's unchanging indifference. I have never admitted that you are my wife. Raising his eyelids, Dustless looked at her indifferently, and his scarlet Sharingan splashed with ripples. He coldly said, Moreover, such vulgar means could deceive the Navy, but it won't work with me. If you want to deceive me, you need to go home and train hard for 100 years. Stupid woman with big breasts and no brains. Staring at Clea, Dustless said inexplicably, What do you mean? I don't understand what you are saying. Clea's gem-like eyes flashed with an unnatural color, and she loudly argued with a red face. However, her confidence was obviously not enough, and she avoided Dustless's eyes, not daring to look at him. Do you still need me to personally expose your tricks? Just how bored are you? Walking in front of Clea, Dustless said with deep meaning. Under the observation of Sharingan, the person in front of him was just a walking corpse. It had the same effect as Rinnegan's elephant rotation jutsu, but there was an essential difference. Under the observation of Sharingan, nothing could hide. But since you want to play, I will accompany you to the end. A strange smile appeared on his handsome face, and his eyes once again splashed with faint ripples. Dustless pressed her eyebrows with one hand, and such a close distance made people daydream. You hypocrite, get out of my way. Clea struggled with all her might, and her face was red with grief and indignation. It is not your body. Why do you pretend to be so real? It is strange that a celestial dragon can act so realistically. Dustless looked at Clea with disdain, and at the same time, a special energy fluctuation came out of his palm and sneaked into her body. The dark energy swallowed everything in Clea's body, and any human tissue was chewed up and swallowed. What a cruel heart! Clea's face changed greatly, and she felt the changes in her body. A ray of emerald light came out of Clea's body and floated in the void. Oh, you are finally willing to come out. With a smile on his handsome face, Dustless looked up at the green light floating in the air and asked with a grin, giving people the feeling that he was asking for a beating. Impossible! Even a Marine Admiral can't see anything wrong with my ability. I should be invincible. The green light spoke in human language and asked Dustless angrily, but she was more curious. Her trick has never failed in front of many strong people, but it didn't work with Dustless today. Invincible ability? I really don't know where your confidence comes from. Indifferently gazing at that beam of light, Wu Chun sighed. His scarlet eyes were extremely mysterious. His eye power was omnipotent. He pointed at his eye sockets, and his emotionless voice resounded in the dark room. In front of these eyes, any perfect ability in the world is full of flaws. Even gods can't hide from my eyes. A sonorous and powerful voice came out of Dustless's throat. The tone was hoarse and low, but no one dared to doubt it. Sure enough, you are a stupid idiot, telling others your ability. Are you not afraid that I will? Didn't I say before, whether it is the power of light that I used before or the power of my eyes now? It is one of my countless abilities. You don't seem to understand what it means. Looking at the emerald light, Dustless's face showed a hopeless expression. Pretending to be mysterious, since you knew from the beginning that I was occupying someone else's body, why didn't you directly expose me? The green light rippled and asked unwillingly. Who would want to be a little devil? Since you want to dance without wind, I can only turn to the wind and let you fly. Otherwise, wouldn't it be a waste of your carefully crafted script? The energy fluctuations from the Sharingan suddenly magnified, and a black flame ignited out of thin air and directly swallowed it. This is not her main body's consciousness, but an existence similar to a split body, so even if it is annihilated, it won't have much effect. Everything in the empty room came to an end. Chapter 400. In the room, everything came to an end and tranquility was restored. In the dark environment, only Dustless's figure was left, blending into the surrounding darkness. This is the body used to reincarnate. It's no different from a vampire. Looking down at the skinny body on the ground, Dustless shook his head and a black ghost fire appeared on his fingertips. He flicked his finger and burned the shriveled body into nothingness. I don't care about your bullshit, Tenryubito. Don't provoke me in the end, otherwise I don't mind staging such a shocking scene as Fratriyubito. Remembering Klaya's previous words, Dustless sneered again and ignored her directly. No matter how bizarre and unreliable a Tenryubito is, it is still immortal. Papa, moving his muscles and bones, there was a crackling sound of bones. Wu Qin was sleepy. The biggest task of the celestial dragons was to eat, drink, and have fun. Unconsciously, he was also affected. He was unusually sleepy. When he was about to have a good sleep, the sound of hurried footsteps suddenly came. It was Hancock who ran over, holding a newspaper in her hand. Did Admiral Kong and the Marine's top officials leave Mariewa? Seeing Hancock's face with eagerness, Dustless asked with expectation. The Marine headquarters top officials gathered in Mariewa. There must be an unknown conspiracy. No. Hancock shook her head and handed the newspaper in her hand directly to Dustless. This is also one of the tasks that Dustless gave her. Every day, the newspaper must be filtered and then the important content must be extracted and handed to Dustless. Frowning slightly, Dustless took the newspaper from Hancock's hand and read its contents rigorously. Hancock also went to make tea. After about an hour, a smile of interest appeared on his face, and his dull eyes were replaced by a shining luster. Obviously, the contents of a newspaper attracted Dustless's attention. Did Kaido fight with Whitebeard? Is that guy crazy? Could it be that his skin is itchy and he wants to use his own body to test how sharp Whitebeard's broadsword is? Throwing the newspaper aside, Dustless's eyes were filled with astonishment. He couldn't help but sweat for Kaido's madness. Whitebeard is known as the strongest man in the world. He is now only in his 50s and is still in the golden age of his life. His endurance are extremely strong. Challenging him is no different from seeking death. However, Kaido directly started a war with the Whitebeard pirates. There's something fishy going on. There's definitely something fishy going on. Narrowing his eyes slightly, Dustless's eyes flashed with a flash of understanding. Kaido was a martial artist and liked to solve problems with strength, but it didn't mean that he didn't know how to use his brain. Challenging Whitebeard was definitely a way to solve problems that would only benefit others. There was no way Kaido didn't understand such a simple and clear logic. It seems like Whitebeard is Kaido's things. That's why he's so desperate. Businessmen pursue profits, and so do pirates. Only under the influence of monstrous interests, Kaido will risk his life to stroke Whitebeard's butt. It's conceivable that the things that are enough to make Kaido crazy are not ordinary things. The sea is full of mystery and contains endless treasures. It is precisely because of this that countless explorers rush into the mysterious sea. All in all, the sea is full of charm. Danger and opportunity coexist. Maybe because of an accidental accident, you will fall into a mysterious cave and find a mountain of gold and silver treasures. This kind of bizarre thing sounds like a fantasy story, but it happens from time to time, and there are countless examples. It may be a devil fruit with strange abilities. Narrowing his eyes, Dustless secretly guessed. For someone like Kaido who stands at the top of the pyramid, only some special devil fruit will attract his attention. The so-called gold coins or treasures can't tempt Kaido at all, especially when his opponent is such a ferocious super monster like Whitebeard. A devil fruit that can tempt Whitebeard and Kaido. With a hidden passion in his eyes, Dustless's face was full of curiosity. Obviously, he was also tempted. It's not just him. I'm afraid the whole world wants to know what special things make the two god-level pirates collide. Will it be a conspiracy of the Marines? Hancock handed the hot tea in her hand to Dustless and analyzed. The Marines love to play tricks, which is known to the world, and pirates like Whitebeard and Kaido are the focus of attention. A trap? That's impossible. You underestimate them too much. Those seemingly rude pirates are actually thoughtful people. Hearing this, Dustless shook his head and drank the boiling tea. The first impression of pirates is that they are rude and brutal. In fact, they're very cunning. All of them are old foxes, and they don't even spit out the bones. The stronger the person, even if there's a conflict, will suppress it because once a war breaks out between the two sides, the consequences are unpredictable, and the whole world may be caught in this vortex. And if he really fell into the Marines' trap, the world would have returned to peace countless years ago, and the popular profession of pirate will not appear again. Anyway, let's go and see if it's useful to me. The hesitation in his eyes was replaced by determination. Wu Chan said resolutely. The devil fruit's ability was all-encompassing. There were all kinds of unheard and unseen abilities. Even the strange ability to make people immortal and indestructible existed. Not only was Dustless moved, but the whole world was boiling. The mysterious thing that caused the confrontation between the two Zhonghai bandits, the worm in everyone's stomach, was hooked. Countless pirate regiments have flocked to the New World, and without exception, their goal is the island where Whitebeard and Kaido fought, to admire the heroic appearance of the two peerless powerhouses. These pirates were also tactful. Knowing that they were not the opponents of the two giants, they just watched from a distance. The aftermath of the battle was enough to make people stop in their tracks. Chapter 401. Somewhere on an iceberg island in the New World, a brand new sailboat was quietly docked on the shore. There was a bonfire on the shore, and tall figures with strong physiques were clearly visible. The sign on the bow was also quite strange. It was a red flamingo, which looked neither fish nor fowl. Several figures sitting on the ground around the bonfire were wolfing down barbecued meat in their hands like beasts. Their hungry appearance was no different from the reincarnation of a hungry ghost. We did a big job. The wretched-looking man with sloppy clothes and messy hair spoke. His arms couldn't help but wave about, and he seemed to be rather happy. He almost stood up and started dancing with joy. Beside him were countless financial reports, as well as various drugs and firearms. There were even a few half-exposed boxes with strange fruits in them. Looking closely, it was the legendary devil fruit. Master, we seem to have made a lot of movements recently. The Marine Vice Admirals have been chasing us all over the world all day. The middle-aged man with sunglasses said uneasily. The Marines' recent tracks were really strange. It was similar to positioning navigation. Wherever the Don Quixote pirates appeared, the Marine flies would come as scheduled. I hope all of this is a coincidence. Hearing this, the middle-aged man who was wolfing down his food looked stiff. He stared at the man with black fur in front of him. This man was the leader of the Don Quixote pirates, Doflamingo. If the situation wasn't so strange, he really didn't want to suspect his brother. Since Corazon appeared, they would occasionally encounter the Marine. Whether it was accidental or inevitable, all of this was too much of coincidence. The recent activities are really frequent. After a signature strange smile, Doflamingo with dark red eyes said cautiously. The Marines' vice admirals were strong, and the current Don Quixote pirates were still a little weak. Especially when they were besieged by several vice admirals, they would definitely be wiped out. That guy Kaido is really an idiot. He really went to war with Whitebeard. It seems that in the face of temptation, he can't give up. Ha! Terrifying and suppressed laughter spread out, and the content involved in it caused one's imagination to run wild. Young master, you're playing with fire. Once we're discovered by Whitebeard and Kaido, they can easily crush us 100 times over with a flick of their fingers. One of the cadres couldn't help but say, the higher the strength of a pirate, the higher their self-esteem. If Whitebeard and Kaido knew that the person behind them was Doflamingo, the Don Quixote pirates would be in big trouble and become the enemy of the whole world. Many pirates will definitely attack the Don Quixote pirates to gain the favor of Whitebeard and Kaido. Kiki, I've always been in this kind of dark business. Besides, if I can really drag this world down with me, I won't regret it even if I immediately step onto the road to the Yellow Springs. A bulge appeared on Doflamingo's forehead, and there seemed to be bugs lurking inside. Doflamingo's eyes were instantly filled with blood vessels. It was horrifying, and his eyes flickered with hatred. The members of the Don Quixote pirates looked at him in fear. Even though the person in front of them was very friendly to their family members and treated them like family, they couldn't help but feel fear in their hearts. Doflamingo's methods were amazing, and he even caused Kaido to challenge Whitebeard. Kiki, they can't know that I did it. Maybe in their eyes, they don't even know who Doflamingo is, let alone suspect me. You think too much, Treble. There was a strange laughter in his throat, and Doflamingo said in a strange tone. Although he said that, you can still hear the unwillingness in his voice. Although he is now famous in the world, it's not enough to catch the attention of those super pirates. Boom, boom, boom. The quiet atmosphere ended, and an ear-piercing roar resounded through the sky. Countless cannonballs suddenly exploded, and monstrous waves splashed up on the water surface. The water splashed everywhere. Looking into the distance, the marine battleship in the distance was clearly visible. It's really a ghost of a bastard. With a cold light in his eyes, Doflamingo said hatefully. At the same time, he waved his arms for a while. The family members who were eating looked at each other and decided to board the ship and escape. The Marine seems to have only sent a vice admiral this time. It seems that we have been underestimated. Through the telescope, Doflamingo's mouth raised and showed a cruel smile. This time, we don't have to be a rat in the street. Kill the cockroach. Doflamingo was annoyed. Being chased by the Marine will leave a shadow in anyone's heart. Master, it's better to take the opportunity to leave. Maybe this is a trap, and they took the initiative to attack the Marine. Seeing Doflamingo's murderous intent, Gladius, one of the family cadres, advised him. Especially killing a Marine vice admiral is not a small crime. Kiki, those people don't know my identity. I am also a descendant of God. Even if they really catch me, they won't dare to do anything to me. Pirates from all over the world heard the news and rushed to the place where Whitebeard and Kaido were fighting. Everyone was shocked by the horrible scene. Giant, a few meters high, fiercely confronted each other, and the ground would change and collapse. In the center of the island, hockey raged, dark clouds rolled, and everything was quiet. There was a long and narrow abyss, and two Haushiko hockey were fighting against each other. As time passed, the crack in the sky became bigger and deeper, as if it was torn by hands. Oh, it's really scary. A young and thin figure flashed out of thin air, with a frivolous smile on the corner of his mouth. Although his mouth was like this, he was not afraid to walk toward the center of the island. Chapter 402. On an unknown island, the smell of blood was everywhere. In order to prevent his identity from being exposed, Dustless took out a mask prepared in advance to cover his face. These pirates don't know Dustless, but there are many people in the Marine. Although the island is filled with pirates, no one can guarantee that there is no Marine undercover. It's good not to be afraid of the Marine, but when the time comes, it will inevitably be troublesome and become the focus of attention. Dustless is convinced of this. Without thinking about it, Dustless went straight to the place where the two forces collided most intensely. Is that Kaido? The fight immediately attracted Dustless's attention. The strong energy fluctuations, even 10 kilometers away from the center, can be felt. Through his strong vision, Dustless can clearly see the figures of Kaido and Whitebeard fighting together. Whitebeard was the kind of supreme overlord. Although Kaido was a latecomer and was considered a junior compared to Whitebeard, he still had a lot of fun fighting with Whitebeard. The humans in this world don't grow up eating hormones. With ripples in his pupils, Dustless is quite speechless. Whether it is Kaido or Whitebeard, they are both tall giants, and their bulging muscles are full of explosive power. It is not a body that normal human beings should have. Don't talk about trying to challenge them. Being looked at by them will break your heart. However, Dustless's goal was not the two of them. His majestic perception spread out and took everything into his eyes. Soon, he found Whitebeard's Moby Dick. With a smile on his face, Dustless walked over. Dustless is not interested in participating in the grievances between Whitebeard and Kaido. They already have grievances, and now the war is just a fuse. Whiz! A sharp cold light fell from the sky. Looking at the sluggish Dustless, the man with the sword had a fierce smile on his face. On this island, as long as you don't know your partner, you are an enemy. Stupid. Shaking his head, Dustless walked straight ahead, ignoring the figure in the sky. The void suddenly condensed a golden iron fist and smashed straight down. Bang! The body of the pirate who was about to kill Dustless exploded as he was hit head-on by the golden iron fist. He simply turned into a pool of blood and scattered in the void. The ground was covered with dark red bloodstains. Along the way, many pirates wanted to take Dustless's life, but they were easily killed on the spot. These pirates were strong, but most of them were similar to cannon fodder. On Moby Dick's deck, Dustless's figure was clearly visible, and the ground was full of corpses. With his eyes half closed, the thick smell of blood lingering in the air was completely ignored. Endless perception spread out in all directions, turning into an endless impact that instantly disintegrated the structure of the ship. After a few breaths of time, he frowned and opened his eyes. There doesn't seem to be anything I want. With a sigh, Dustless said helplessly, "Think about it. The Whitebeard pirates are not idiots. Such an important thing will naturally not be placed on the ship." He turned around, and a ghostly voice echoed behind him. "Hey, a bunch of useless guys, let a mouse slip in." The mouth is so disdainful, but the person who came is actually murderous. The members of the Whitebeard pirates are all sons of Whitebeard. In other words, the relationship between each other's crew is also brotherly. His body is burning with dreamy blue flames, and the flames are more intense and deep, enough to burn everything. Marco, captain of the first team of the Whitebeard pirates, Zoan's fantasy bee seed fruit, has a super regenerative ability, known as the Immortal Bird, and is extremely powerful. Looking indifferently at the angry figure burning with green flames, Dustless chuckled. "You are a brave guy. You came on board to steal things and made such a big movement. You are crazy." His eyes were gloomy as he looked at the fragments of Moby Dick. Marco's huge palm condensed into a fist. The ship was even older than him and was one of their indispensable partners. Now that it was destroyed by Dustless, his heart was self-evident. "You made a mistake, Marco." Hearing this, Dustless raised his finger and shook it gently. He smiled and said, "If I didn't make such a big movement, how would you know that I was on board? I'm a busy man. I don't have time to play hide and seek with you, so I can only let you come to me." As soon as the lazy voice fell, the figure of the Immortal Bird disappeared completely, crossing the void, and came in front of Dustless in an instant. "Since you want to die so much, I will help you. The prestige of the Whitebeard pirates is not something you can provoke. Go to hell and repent." With blue flames on his fist, Marco punched towards Dustless's back. It was so powerful that it was enough to smash through a mountain. He will never let go of those who dare to trample on his father's feelings. Good speed, the fruit ability is also good. His pupils rippled, and he was aware of the hot fist behind him that wanted to burn him into nothingness. Dustless said calmly, and then closed his eyes calmly. A layer of golden luster rose from the ground. Boom! With a bang, Marco's whole arm trembled fiercely and his face was aghast. He stared at the golden light, as thin as a cicada's wing. His heart inevitably sank, and he did not hesitate to burst back. Ability user. This kind of sturdy barrier is actually so hard. His face was unusually ugly. This ordinary-looking golden energy was unexpectedly tough. His full force attack just now felt like he had hit a meteorite, and his arm was numb from the shock. "Do you want to say it yourself, or do you want me to ask it myself?" Dustless asked casually as a ripple splashed in the sky. At the same time, a sword of light had condensed in his hand. The sharp light made people not dare to look directly at it. Under the cover of the golden light, everyone felt as if there was a knife at their back. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.